Oh, welcome back. As you know, I am Eli, the computer guy here for Silicon Dojo, where we are focused on gatekeeperless, authorityless, free to the end user technology education that is designed to empower you to do whatever the hell it is that you want to do. Please do remember that free to the end user doesn't actually mean free. Stuff costs money. All this stuff costs money. So if you are willing and able to, if you'd like to throw a couple of dollars into our donor box or other crowdfunding accounts, that would be highly appreciative so I can keep trying to do this, keep putting out all of these classes. So today we are on part two of our cyber security curriculum, and we're gonna get into some exciting stuff today. I know some folks out there talk about Arduinos, some people talk about Kali or bad USBs, but that's not what Eli, the computers guy's gonna do. I'm so much cooler than that. Today we're gonna be talking about employee security policies. Yeah! Wait, come back. Young person, I see you leaving. Young person, I see you about to click off. Sit down, get your finger away from that mouse, and watch this class. This class is gonna be good for you. It's gonna be like vitamins, right? If you wanna become a big, bad cybersecurity professional someday, you gotta take your educational vitamins. And this is one of the most valuable educational vitamins out there. So again, I know especially this is gonna be on YouTube and other social media sites. Unfortunately, we have a lot of young people on these sites that watch these videos and they wanna do real stuff in cybersecurity, right? They don't wanna worry about documentation. They don't wanna worry about tax issues. They don't wanna worry about regulations. They wanna get into the nitty gritty and use Metasploit and low orbit ion cannons, if anybody actually still uses that, right? They wanna do real technology. Here's the thing though, right? As I will keep repeating again and again and again and again, my education is focused on people that are going to be technology professionals, hopefully decision makers in the technology profession, hopefully owners in the technology profession, and the reality is, most of our job is paperwork. That's right, boys and girls. It's not going to be all that cool, sexy stuff you think it's going to be. It's going to be a lot of documentation. It's going to be a lot of paperwork, right? If you're a real IT professional, if you're a real cybersecurity professional, you have to worry about things such as licenses. You have to worry about things such as regulations. Oh, golly, every once in a while you have to worry about what is actually legal and illegal for you to do in your job. This kind of stuff is vitally important, and the problem is it's not cool, it's not sexy, it's not things you can dump into a 5-minute clickbait video, and so a lot of people ignore it, and that's where we get to a lot of problems in the real corporate world. If you look at cybersecurity issues in the modern corporate world, most of it is just bad professionals, to be honest with you. Again, people, security professionals, technology professionals, they don't want to worry about the law. They don't want to worry about regulation. They don't want to worry about, basic administrative best practices. And we start to get a lot of stupid things because of that. And so again, with this cybersecurity, I'm gonna be talking to you about the real stuff. Don't worry, we'll get to bad USBs and Arduinos, and we will get to that kind of stuff. But I want you to understand is that stuff is just technology. Just like everything else, it comes and goes. What's useful today isn't so useful tomorrow, and it becomes useful again for some reason later. Right? That's just technology. That's just products. The important thing for you is to learn how to be a decision maker, to learn how to sit down, look at your overall environment, look at your overall situation, look at all the resources that are at your disposal, and then figuring out how to produce the best results with all of that. And a lot of times, that's a lot of paperwork. Like, think about that, right? A lot of people want to be a YouTuber, right? A lot of people are like, oh, Eli, I wish I could be a YouTuber, right? I've been a professional YouTuber now for 11 years, right? Because what people see for a professional YouTuber is we get on camera and we bounce around and we act like morons for however long, and then we get paid for doing nothing. Money for nothing, right? Your clicks for free. What they don't see is that basically my actual job, to be clear, my actual job is never-ending PowerPoint presentations. I will do this PowerPoint presentation for you, and then I'll go home, and tomorrow I will start on the next PowerPoint presentation, and then the next PowerPoint presentation, and then the next PowerPoint presentation. I've basically been doing PowerPoint presentations for like 11 years. 11 years of bullet points. And that's the thing. Like, what you see is me talking into the camera, and you're like, wow, I wish I got paid to talk into a camera. What you don't see is the never-ending creation of PowerPoint presentations, essentially. So the same thing is true with cybersecurity. Like, people like, when the cybersecurity experts come through and they're doing auditing and they're doing penetration testing and they're doing all this wacky, crazy stuff. Right? But they don't want to see the preparation. They don't want to see the paperwork. They don't want to see the documentation. They don't want to see all the legal stuff that goes around it. They just want to do the cool things. And here's the thing, with most of these jobs, the cool stuff might be 10% of the job. If you are lucky in the real world, your cool job, 10% of that cool job will actually be doing something cool. And 90% is basically paperwork and things. So we're going to be talking about this employee security policy today because this is one of the big keystones for your cybersecurity program within your organization or institution. The reality is the biggest danger to your infrastructure is your employees. Now look, I'm not being snarky about this. I'm not being, daddy warbucks or whatever about this. This is just reality. Some people want to destroy your infrastructure because they're a-holes. Some people want to destroy your infrastructure in order to try to embezzle money or something like that. Some employees are just really dumb and they do shockingly stupid things. They spin up their own DHCP servers for some reason on the network. Why are you spinning up a DHCP server? That doesn't make any sense. Anyways, right, the reality is generally the reason that you're going to be dealing with downtime is because of employees for any number of reasons. So you really need to think about your employee security policy and how you're going to be dealing with employees within your organization. Again, if you have the buy-in of the employees, if the employees trust you, right, if everybody's on the same page, things like security are so much easier. If you are considered the enemy, if you are considered the outsider, if you are considered the bad person that comes in and takes away people's cool toys, life is just going to be difficult for you and your security environment is going to suffer for it. So the first thing that I want to talk about is culture. Now again, this is one of those words that's used so much in the startup world, right? We've heard so much about culture in the startup world, Uber's culture and Facebook's culture and Google's culture. But it's one of those weird things, like people throw the buzzword around and they're very serious about it, but at the end of the day, they kind of ignore it when it comes to things like hiring practices or whatever else. The important thing, one of the reasons why I will keep circling back to culture whenever I talk about dealing with organizations or institutions' infrastructure, is because the reality is if everybody has the same basic culture, everybody is looking at the world more or less the same way. Now, when I say this about culture, I'm not saying they all eat the same food. I'm not saying that they all vote for the same, political parties. I'm not saying they all necessarily like the same Netflix shows or whatever else. It's questions about things like punctuality. Is the culture of the company one of punctuality or not of punctuality? Is the culture one of the company of rule breaking or not rule breaking? And again, I know what some startup founders are going to be like, yeah, we're rule breakers. We're rule breakers. Well, here's the thing. This is the important thing to understand when you create your culture. If you hire a bunch of people that are rule breakers, right, you're going to be excited about that. Because, yeah, you don't care about those bureaucrats. You don't care about those vested corporate interests. You're rule breakers. Well, here's the thing. You create a culture of rule breakers. And then at some point, you're going to have to start creating rules. This isn't a snarky thing. It's just how the real world is, right? The larger the company grows, the more revenue there is for the company, the more responsibility there is, there's going to be more and more rules. Rules are just one of those things. Taxes, death, and rules come for us all. And so if you have a culture of people who break the rules, and then you start implementing very vital rules that are required to keep your organization afloat, and they're all rule breakers, do you see where things are gonna get bad, right? So one of the big things you need to be thinking about from a cybersecurity professional is looking at the culture of your company and trying to help create a unified culture that actually gives a damn about cybersecurity, right? Because that's the whole thing. Like, when I was working the corporate world before, way back in the day, Napster was the big thing. And all our salespeople kept installing Napster under their Windows 95 machines, which was brutal. Windows 95 had no resources. Anyways, they kept installing Napster on their machine. The problem is I kept going to their manager, and their manager didn't see a problem with it. So even though the salespeople were breaking the rule, they were violating corporate policy, even though that violation of corporate policy was tanking their systems, which was giving me more work, every time I went to their boss to say, look, this has to stop. I do not have enough time to fix the computers that your people are breaking because they're violating corporate policy. And the manager's response was, shrug of his shoulders, right? Culture, regardless of the rules or anything else, right? And if we go to Merriam-Webster, the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. Again, I know people get caught up in the whole racial or religious thing. Also, the characteristic feature of everyday existence, such as diversions or a way of life shared by people in a place or time, the set of shared attitudes, values, goals, and practices that characterize an institution or organization. Again, when you think about culture, where I've just lived for many years of my life in the Baltimore area, we had Lockheed Martin, we had Northrop Grumman, we had a lot of people that were coming out of the military, technology in the military world. They were then going to technology in the contracting military world, and there was a mentality there, right? They care about security. They care about punctuality. They know that they're not supposed to install Napster or whatever the coolest thing is on their corporate laptops, right? That is a culture, and that's something you really need to be thinking about, especially in this modern world of activist employees. Now again, I'm not going to get political on this. This isn't about that side or any side. One of the big problems we have right now is a lot of people, right? They feel that their job is their entire world. They do not have hobbies anymore. They don't have family anymore. They don't have religion anymore. They don't really like their country anymore. Right? See, back in the day, for old timers like me, you had your job, and you had your hobbies, and you had your family life, and you had your social things going on. Your job was one component of your life, the one that was responsible for paying the mortgage or paying the rent, right? After you're done with your job, you would go out and do whatever it is that you want to do. One of the big issues we're getting into the modern world is that in many employees, their life is the darn job. Their social group is the job. Everything about them is the job. And so the problem is when we have that, and then we have the activism that is currently going on. Again, for my generation, right, you do your 40 hour of work a week, and then on the weekend you go protest. Yay, right? You're doing, right? The thing is, in the modern world, though, when a lot of people, they feel like their entire lives are their jobs, then if they're going to be activists, if they're going to be protest, then what are the chances they're going to do it literally at the company? And what are the chances that the company is going to be the target of the activism? And what does that mean as a cybersecurity professional? What happens when the employee culture of a company feels A-okay targeting the company that is paying them? That's a hell of a thing to think about. And again, I'm not on either side or any of this, but this actually came out from the Coinbase debacle of last year. So this is being filmed in 2021. In 2020, we had the Black Lives Matter movement. We had a whole bunch of stuff going on with George Floyd and all that. But this was a snippet I found very interesting out of a Wired article. The reaction was swift. Dozens of employees began posting, quote, Black Lives Matter in internal Slack channels, and executives in the meeting, including Armstrong, hastily added that they did personally believe that Black Lives Matter, but a virtual walkout had already begun to spread. Again, think about this. You already have people that are now doing a virtual walkout. They're walking out of their job over a political thing. Again, this is Coinbase. Coinbase can be political, right? Coinbase is blockchain and cryptocurrencies. There's a lot of political stuff in Coinbase when you think about it. But again, think about this company getting involved one way or the other in BLM. What I thought was very interesting, though, let's see here. Walkout had already begun to spread through the customer experience team, the employee resource groups like ColorBlock, and the engineering teams. This is the important thing to think about, and this is where I would be scared for Coinbase. Senior engineers, not interns, not lower level engineers. Senior engineers encouraged junior staff to close their laptops in solidarity. That's the hell of a thing to be thinking about in your corporate environment. What happens when the employees of your company, the senior level employees of your company, feel like it's a-okay to attack the company because of things that are realistically outside the realm of the company's responsibility. Again, if you look at Coinbase, Coinbase is cryptocurrency, Coinbase is blockchain, Coinbase is finance, Coinbase is a lot of things. It's not BLM, it's not Black Lives Matter, it's not these other social movements. What happens when employees decide that they need to cause pain upon their organization or institution because their organization or institution is not putting out the right party lines? This is something you have to think about, and this is one of the reasons that culture is more and more important in this modern world. One of the big problems that we have nowadays is everybody spits out this word culture, and then they kind of hire folks willy-nilly. I remember a CEO, one of the best quotes I ever heard from a CEO. He said, "We hire people too quickly, and we fire them too slow." Like when you see somebody and you like somebody and they have good credentials, you want to hire that person. You like that person, they seem like a good person, you want to hire them. But a big question is, what is their cultural background? Are they from a culture of punctuality? Are they from a culture of feeling like the company should be profitable? Realize in this modern world that many employees don't think that their business's focus should be profit. How does that fit into your cybersecurity strategy? How does it work when the employees at your company are willing to damage your company because of things outside of the company's, interest or areas of interest? Something to be considering there. One of the things you need to deal with when you're dealing with employees is remember, none of the policies, nothing works unless you actually have buy-in. Again, there's this big problem with a lot of leadership, a lot of managers, a lot of bosses of the employees will do what I tell them to do. That's adorable. That's adorable. No, they won't. I guarantee you they won't, right? The employees will do enough to continue getting a paycheck. The employees will do enough to make sure that they don't get fired. But just because some rule comes down on high doesn't mean that the employees are actually going to give a damn. And do remember, one of the big things to understand is managers are employees too. Again, with those senior engineers telling the junior level engineers to shut their laptops and basically do a walk-off or whatever, remember, if you just put down rules and regulations for things like cybersecurity from the people on high, the people on low aren't gonna give a damn. So you're gonna need buy-in, and you're going to get that buy-in from actually bonding with the employees. When you are looking at your environment, when you're looking at your institution, your organization, right, you need to look at all employees within that organization basically from a level playing field. For you as a cybersecurity expert, the warehouse laborers may very well be as important as the senior level managers from a cybersecurity standpoint, right? The senior level managers, you may actually be able to lock them down with group policies and all that kind of stuff, and the senior level managers might not actually be able to do a lot with your infrastructure. On the other hand, your warehouse workers who are running around with the Zebra scanners or whatever else, there might actually be a hell of a lot of vulnerability within that warehousing infrastructure that you haven't thought about before. And so one of the things you need to be doing is you need to be interacting with everybody, talking to them as if you're all equal human beings and figuring out where their pain points are, where the problems are, trying to explain where you're coming from a cybersecurity perspective and go from there. Relationships are going to be worth more than products. Here's the thing. If you go to anybody, whether it's a CEO, whether it's a warehouse worker, and you try to force a product down their throat, I tell you to go to hell. Again, believe me, I've been up and down the socioeconomic spectrum. When I was a consultant, I talk about going from the projects to the penthouse. I literally have that little phrase because I literally did that one day. I literally went from the projects in Baltimore, where there were 9 kids all like running all over each other. It's freaking adorable. And then went about a mile away, and I was at a penthouse suite condo, and discussing the thread count on Egyptian cotton sheets. Right. But one of the things that I found is basically humans are humans, right? People are people. They want their ego stroked. They want to feel that they're important. They don't want to feel like they're being oppressed by the man. Again, whether it's the cybersecurity or whether it's the CEO or whether it's the warehouse worker. So one of the things you need to do is you need to create relationships with everybody so you can just go to them and be like, look, I know you don't understand what I'm talking about. Took me like a year to figure out what I'm talking about, right? You don't understand what I'm talking about. You don't understand the threats that we're dealing with. You don't understand a lot of stuff. But here's what you do understand. You do understand. I care about this deeply. I care about this deeply because I want this organization to succeed, and I genuinely feel that if we do not implement these policies, this organization very well might fail, which means everybody here is going to be on food stamps. So do you want to be on food stamps? No, neither do I. So please, let me implement the security policy, follow the rules, so that none of us are going to be on food stamps, right? Again, one of the big problems you see is cybersecurity. Again, that's the big problem with the technology world. We're really tell you this. The real technology world is, we have a lot of people with really small egos. For whatever reason, they weren't good at football, they weren't good at sports, they weren't good at very much, but they really were good at computers. And so computers is where they found that they could be significant, that where their friends and their families like, wow, that's awesome, you're cool. And so they built up this huge ego basically only around computers. And so they stride into these situations in the corporate world acting like a-holes. I'm the XYZ. And again, it causes damage to everything. Relationships. Yes, your job is to set up firewalls. It's also to create relationships with everybody that firewall will affect. People telegraph their intentions, fire them before they become a problem. Again, I have sat down with employees who are quite vocal about how anti-authoritarian they are. If you have an anti-authoritarian employee, you probably want to fire them, right? I literally sat down with an employee one time. Again, it's amazing what people say. Here's the thing, as an ASPE, right? As an ASPE, it's not that I'm a good listener. It's just that I'm a good, horrible talker in the real world. I know sitting here talking to a camera makes me seem like I'm very, very good and eloquent with speech. The reality is actually having conversations in the real world is a complete pain in the butt for many reasons that go along with being an ASPE. So it's not that I'm a good listener, it's just that I'm a really bad conversationalist. And so most of the time I just sit there and listen to people. And I am horrified with what people tell me. I literally had an employee tell me once that the reason they lost their previous jobs, they're just sitting there having a cup of coffee, doing whatever. It's like, the reason I lost my previous job is, the manager was really back talking me and saying something. So I just beat the crap out of him. Oh, what? He just said it. He was just like, yeah, I beat the crap out of that manager. I was like, well, you know what? You should probably be fired. So again, if you have relationships with people, you start to understand where there may be problems. Seek to understand employee problems and then find where you can yield. Again, a lot of people in the technology world, they want to force their will upon others, right? They have control of their infrastructure, and so you will submit. Right? One of the big things is, though, if your user base always feels that you, as a cybersecurity professional, is always trying to get them to submit, and nobody likes submitting, you're going to run into a lot of problems. So if you sit there and you actually have a conversation with your employees, you figure out what problems they have, and then you figure out where you can yield. Where can you come to a compromise? And one of the things I'll talk about later is, let's say you have blacklists and whitelists for DNS. You don't want your users going to Facebook, you don't want your users going to Reddit, whatever else on company equipment. You're worried about the security, you're worried about a whole lot of ramifications if they go to these social networking sites, right? So the reason that you're doing that on your internal network is you're trying to secure your internal network. Well, here's the thing, right? If everybody has their BYOD devices in their pocket, their smartphones and everything else, one of the ways that you can compromise is like, okay, on all the corporate equipment, that's all blacklisted in the whole 9 yards. But we will have an open guest network where your own device that you own is disassociated from the rest of the internal network. You can use that to go to Facebook and YouTube and everything else. Right? That's one of those things to be thinking about is where can you compromise? If you do not compromise, your users are not going to care. And as soon as they stop caring about your authority, you do not have authority. Authority is given to you. Again, what a lot of people in the technology world don't understand is they think they grant themselves authority. I am an authority. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Users submit to authority. They give you the authority. They say, we agree to follow you, right? Again, managers are employees too. Build a network of influencers within your organization and to get their buy-in, right? So again, when we talk about influencers in the modern world, we think about Instagram and Twitter and YouTube, right? We think about those kind of influencers. But influencers are a natural part of human society, right? In human society, we have actual leaders, so leaders are like the president or the CEO or something like that. But then within any organization, we have the influencers. The influencers are the cool kids. Right, remember in high school, they were cool kids. Why were they cool? I don't even think we knew why they were cool when we were in high school. They were just some kids in high school that were cool and some kids that were dorky. And if you actually really took a look at it empirically, I'm not sure how different they really were. But people just liked these people better than they liked those people. And when these people did something, people would try to emulate and be like them. Something to be thinking about in your organizational world is how can you find the influencers in your organization and get them to buy into your cybersecurity program, right? You go out there, let's say you have the salesperson, the hotsy-totsy salesperson going out there, landing all the deals, making a gazillion dollars, driving the fancy car, right? Here's the thing, if I try to explain to 30 salespeople why they should follow cybersecurity policies, I'm gonna fail. But if I can go to that one, if I can go to that influencer within the sales team and say, hey, can I sit down and buy you a steak? I'm really impressed with the work that you've been doing with the company, and I would like you to understand how our department affects your ability to close sales. And then you sit there and you explain database, a little bit about databases, a little bit about VPN, a little bit. And then you explain how if any of these systems fail, they'll no longer be able to close sales. And oh, yeah, you won't be, I mean, if these systems fail and we're down for a week, you won't be able to close any sales for a week. And how much do you close in sales every week? Oh yeah, and your commission must be pretty good. So yeah, if our infrastructure goes down, that basically means you're gonna lose, that much in commission in 1 week. Plus all of the lost trust and everything else from the people that you're selling to. And so you can go to that person, right? And that's the highest salesperson out there, and they realize how valuable cybersecurity is for the company. They will go down and they will start smacking every other salesperson in the department, because what's most important to them is their commission. And if anybody screws with their commission, they're gonna get smacked. Right? This is the thing to be thinking about. In the secretarial pool or the administrative pool, whatever the hell they're called nowadays, right? There are cool secretaries, and there are not so cool secretaries, right? The secretaries everybody wants to look up to. One of the important things to understand in the real corporate world is within all the realms in the corporate world, right? Like there are professionals in that realm, and they look up to different people. So in the secretarial pool or whatever they're called nowadays, you go to the cool kids there, and you buy them some coffee, and you buy them some steak. You know, last week I was talking to the head salesperson, and I want you to understand you are so important to cybersecurity, I'm now talking to you. Oh, wow, right? That makes them feel good. And then the other people in the secretarial pool knew that they were taken out by the cybersecurity person in the company to discuss cybersecurity issues. They now look more significant. And now you have influencers within the company that are now going to be propagating, hopefully, the ideas and cybersecurity concepts that you are trying to push out. The more friends you have in the organization, the easier everything is going to go. Again, I know in the technology world, the idea of office politics is horrible. Oh, can you believe some people do office politics? It's like, yes, I can. Makes life a hell of a lot easier. Now, the first thing to do is you need to go and you need to actually talk to the CEO. The CEO, or whoever the highest level person it is in the company. CEO, the boss, the owner, whatever else. And you need to start asking them some questions about what they envision. Again, an important thing to understand about any company is a company is as much a work of art as it is anything else, right? It can be whatever the boss wants it to be. When it comes to how much money is put into, flash, pomp and circumstance, how much money is put into things like education, where should the company actually be located, all of this kind of stuff, this is art. This isn't a science. Like where your office is as a business, That's not a science. That's whatever the hell does the CEO or the executive decides. How much money is going to be spent on desks and server rooms and all that kind of stuff? And that comes from the CEO's mindset. And so an important thing to understand is some CEOs, right, they want all the profit to go to them to buy a yacht. I'm not saying whether this is good or bad, this is just the reality, right? They basically want to mine the hell out of the corporation to take as much money as possible and go buy a yacht. And so what's important to understand here is you're most likely not going to get a lot of financial resources for your cybersecurity endeavors. They will want to run everything as lean and as mean as possible. And if you understand that, then you can start building your infrastructure and you can start basically closing off the holes and all that in your infrastructure based off of a lean and mean environment. On the other hand, some CEOs want the flash, they want the pomp, they want the circumstance, they want it to be seen as awesome and cool and hip. I think about this. CBT Nuggets hired me years ago, and I went out to CBT Nuggets out in Eugene, Oregon, and They had saltwater tanks for their fish. They had a knife throwing room. They literally had a knife throwing room. Every employee had a stand-up desk. This was many years ago, so this wasn't the normal thing. They had a stand-up desk. They had Macs with double monitors. They had these weird little ball things to stand on, supposedly to keep their exercise and the whole 9 yards, right? When you went in, they had these big dashboards. They had this whole wall of basically screens with real-time dashboards and crap, right? They want fancy and flashy and cool, right? They are doing, technology education. They are getting people to be successful, they're getting people to make a lot of money, and so they want to show off how cool and sexy the profession is. And so, again, they spend a lot of money on all these accoutrements and things. And so one of the things to be thinking about then is when you're dealing with your CEO and you're going to do the sales pitch to the CEO for whatever products or services that you need for your server rooms or whatever else, something to be thinking about is again, where the CEO is coming from for how the organization should look. Is it going to be lean and mean? So if it's lean and mean, then basically your server room may literally be chain link fence with a door, and with your one-use server just whirring so the entire office can hear. And that's the environment that you're going to be dealing with. Those are the resources you're going to have. On the other hand, if you have an executive that wants all the flash and cool and sexiness, right? That's where you might go to them and say, hey, we can do this really cool server room, and we can do glass that looks into the server room, and we can have these dashboards and all this kind of stuff so everybody understands what's going on in our environment, right? This is all the kind of stuff that you need to be thinking about, and you need to be talking to your CEO to ask them, how do they see their own company? Then what are the CEO's goals? What are the plans for this company? Again, especially if you're dealing with a startup, the startup may just want to get as big as possible, sell, and move on, right? They may not care that much about security. Their idea is the lawsuits will come after they get acquired by somebody else, right? So they just want to go full speed ahead. On the other hand, like I had one company of mine, it was 15 years ago, 16 years ago. Anyways, they basically at the time, they had the CEO and an employee, right? So they had some subcontractors, but CEO and the employee. And they contracted me to get a small business server. So Windows NT, whatever, small business server, had a lot of cool stuff in there. Had Exchange, SharePoint, all that kind of stuff, routing, remote access. And so I was sitting there and I was building this thing out for the CEO, and I was just like, this seems kind of expensive for two people. I'm doing it, I will cash your check. But it seems a little bit expensive for what you have here. And the CEO looked at me and said, Eli, I am building up this company to sell, so I plan to sell within 5 or 6 years. And when I sell, this company needs to be sold basically as a block. Somebody needs to be able to come in, look at the company, see that everything is functioning. Everything from the customers and orders getting routed and all that kind of stuff to the secretary getting email. Everything needs to work perfectly so somebody can just come in and buy this company. And so he bought a hell of a lot more than a company of his size technically needed, because his goal was to get to this point where he was going to have 50 employees and sell it for $20 million just as a block thing. Again, this is just what's in their head. And then the next question is, what are the CEO's priorities? So out of this, profit and pomp and circumstance, all this kind of stuff, how does a CEO prioritize all of these different priorities, and where are they in the list? Again, when you actually sit there and talk with them, you might be surprised. A lot of CEOs put cool factor at the top. And so if you put the cool, if you try to sell more cool, you'll sell more actual security products to them. This is an important thing to realize. I had a friend of mine who was a consultant who lost a very, very, very good client. A ridiculously good client. And he lost the client for being cheap, right? So anyways, this was 10 years or so ago. So high availability was already available for small business clients. And this was a lawyer, right? So this lawyer contracted with my friend to install their infrastructure. So they're getting new servers, new equipment, all this kinds of stuff, right? So my friend goes in there, they install everything is working perfectly, everything is up to snuff, everything is great. About two months later, server takes a crap, right? I don't know, the array or whatever failed. Anyways, my friend comes in, takes a look at it, goes, okay, no problem. We're just gonna buy the new equipment. It'll take about a week to come in, and once it's in, we'll get you back up and running. And so the CEO of this law company basically goes to him and says, is this the best that can be done? I don't understand why we spent so much money with you, why we are now down for a week. And my friend looked at him and said, well, if you had spent $10,000 more, you could have had high availability where if this server failed, the other server popped up and you'd be fine. And then the CEO looked at him and said, why didn't we get high availability? And my friend said, well, I thought it was going to cost too much for you. And then my friend was fired. I want you to understand why my friend was fired. My friend was fired because he was making decisions for the CEO. More importantly, he was making the wrong decisions for the CEO. The CEO is more than happy to spend that extra $10,000 to have a high availability, redundant server so everything could just flip over to it. But because my friend decided to make decisions based off of his priorities, not the CEO's priorities, his priorities, he got fired from a client that literally was like, I would have just written the check. So be careful there. Then we go to IT and HR. So again, this is one thing you're gonna notice. There's a whole bunch of people that we're gonna be talking to. Talking. When do we get to the cybersecurity, Eli? After we get done with the talking. How are you going to implement cybersecurity within your environment if you do not understand your environment? Riddle me that. So IT and HR. So again, when we're dealing with employees, there are a lot of legal things that go around along with employees. There are a lot of regulations and things that go along with employees. And so you're going to have to understand a lot of that stuff within your particular environment. Again, if you're in the United States, it's going to be different than you're in Europe. And again, I know Europe is not a country. It's going to be different whether you're in Italy or whether you're in France or whether you're in Spain or whether you're in Luxembourg, right? Rules and regulations and all of this kind of stuff are different everywhere. So one of the things you need to do is you need to sit down with your HR person and actually ask them what issues they're having. Understand the hiring and firing process for your company. So again, think about this. Probably the way that you are most vulnerable from a cybersecurity standpoint in your company is from employees. What happens if you find an employee that you cannot trust? Just because even here in the United States you have at-will employment, so at-will employment basically means I can fire somebody just because I don't like them. Now, I can't fire them because of their race. I can't fire them because of their religion. I can't fire them because of their gender. I can't fire them because they have a bad choice in shoes. You know what I'm saying? That person walks in with Nikes that look like that. I cannot handle that. Gone! That's true. That's sad but true. I can't fire you based off of your race. I can fire you based on your choice in shoes. Anywho, doesn't necessarily mean that's how the process works in your company. I hope it doesn't how it works in your company. And so one of the things you have to understand is how to actually fire somebody, right? So a lot of companies, they basically have a more or less a 3-strike and you're out policy. If you get written up 3 times for disciplinary actions, you are fired from the company. This is something that you need to be thinking about as a cybersecurity professional, because what happens if you see an employee do something and then you don't write it up? And then you see them do something again and you don't write it up. And then they do something really bad and you finally get around to writing it up. But as far as HR is concerned, That's the first write-up. The third time they did something stupid, they almost took down your network. But you did not document the problems beforehand, therefore you can't get their butts fired. Again, things to be thinking about is like what documentation is required for disciplinary actions against employees. Making sure you actually get all of that documentation together so that you can do something about stupid employees. It's things you need to be thinking about. Understand what issues the HR department is having. Again, when you look at human resources, they're doing their job just like everybody else is. So ask them, what issues are you running into when you're hiring employees? What issues are you running into with being able to keep employees? Basically, these types of things, you have a better idea of what they're dealing with, and then understand what rules and laws there are for employers in your area. So a lot of things that I'm going to be talking about today are spying. In the old days, we used to call it management. In the modern world, they call it spying. Anyways, right? So what are things like, what are the laws around the expectation of privacy at companies within the state or the jurisdiction that you're dealing with? Do employees have an expectation of privacy on their company phones, right? This may actually be written into law. There may be written into law that an employee literally has no expectation of privacy on their phone, and therefore you can put a keylogger in, you can put a voice and video recorder in, you can do a whole bunch of stuff so that, you know, whatever they do on their phone, you'll be able to log that. And that might be A-okay. On the other hand, in the jurisdiction, it may be considered that if you give somebody a phone, I don't know, their email might be visible by the company, allowed to be visible by the company, but voice and text messages are not. Again, this has nothing to do with Active Directory. This has nothing to do with security services and firewalls and all that kind of stuff. It's what are the actual laws. And the other thing to be thinking about too, remember as a technology professional, as a decision maker, right? If you implement things that are illegal in your area, you may be going to court. I think about this with Uber, right? Uber's chief of security, their system got hacked, and so basically he tried to pay off the hackers, right? There's a whole thing, a whole bunch of user information got taken off the network, it got grabbed by the hackers, and so then the chief of security then went to the hackers, basically paid them off, and got them to delete all the information that they had stolen. Well, the problem was, this is what he did was illegal. He got his ass dragged to court because he did, even though he was doing it for the company under the company name, he was taking actions that were illegal under the law. And therefore, he got hit. Again, things to understand, within your legal environment. If you're doing things like penetration testing, recently within the last year or so, there were penetration testers. They were hired by it was like the state of Utah. It was like this Utah or Idaho. They're hired by the state in order to go in and do penetration testing for courthouses. They went into a courthouse. They were doing their penetration testing. Police officers found them. They pulled out their paperwork and said, "Hi, we have the legal authority to be doing what we're doing," and then they got arrested and they got thrown in jail for a while because the courthouse did not feel that they had the legal authority to doing what they're doing. Right? There's all kinds of weird stuff that gets into the cybersecurity world. So remember, CYA. At the end of the day, CYA, cover your ass because nobody else will. So make sure, again, when you're going through and you're looking at things like email. The CEO brings you a computer of a manager who left, and they don't have they lost the ability to get into the computer, and so now you need to go through and you need to crack into the email accounts and be able to pull out whatever email they had. Where what is the legality there? We're going to talk about something like shadow IT in a couple of minutes. So shadow IT is basically information technology that's purchased by the employee, but it's not actually supported by the company, right? So what if I create my own database system? A salesperson creates their own database system. They then leave the company. There's a whole bunch of valuable information in the database system, but their credit card is what paid for that database system. You as a cybersecurity professional, if you try to crack into that database system to get back what's considered the company's information, but you try to get the company's information out of their personal database system, a lot of legal stuff there, right? Issues. That then goes into IT and legal. So if you're dealing with a large, decent sized company, there's going to be a legal department. Understand what the legal priorities of the company are. Again, this is an important thing, especially in the startup world right now. In many places in the startup world, the legal priorities are they don't care about the law. It's actually kind of horrific. It's actually kind of horrific how little many of these startup companies actually care about the law and how many people they are literally endangering by their lack of interest in the law. But that's something that you need to go and you need to sit down with the legal department about. Again, are you expressly dealing everything completely legally, or are you doing what needs to get done? Again, if you're working for Northrop Grumman and you're doing cybersecurity and they're dealing with government contracts, they need everything to be above board. Everything that they do has to be absolutely legal, so there can be no question marks. On the other hand, if you're working for Uber, priorities. Understand what the regulations actually affect your company. Again, things like HIPPA, the Health Information Protection Act or whatever, PCI compliance, this is for if you take any credit card information, any of those kinds of things. Because again, something to be thinking about is you can have things that are technically secure, but they won't pass muster if you actually get audited, right? So with a lot of these compliance things, they're specific stuff. All the physical equipment actually has to be physically locked away. It has to be segregated away from any place somebody that can just walk into. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes along with these regulations. So you can have high availability, you can have clusters, you can have all kinds of stuff going on. But if you don't actually have all of your equipment actually build out the way that they're supposed to based off of the regulations, that can cause your company problems. And so that's one thing you need to talk to your legal department about. And then also with this is you'll notice, as I keep saying, relationships. I know right now I have a lot of horrified IT people, a lot of horrified people that want to get into cybersecurity, and they're like, but Eli, the reason I like technology is because I hate people. Sucks for you. Because it's all going to be about relationships. So you're going to create a connection, so when asked to do something questionable, you have someone to call. Again, I have dealt with this with executives and directors and the whole 9 yards. They come in, they start demanding, they feel like the louder they are and the meaner they look, the faster things will happen, which doesn't work out so well with IT departments. But one of the big problems you can run into is I'm not sure about the legality of what you're asking. And then there can be this whole argument. Again, they can try to pressure you into do something you don't feel comfortable with. It's a lot easier. If you have a phone number for somebody, they come in, they demand that you open up the email account or whatever for this user. One of the things you can do is if you already have a connection with legal, you go, okay, I understand what you're asking for. 1 second, I'm just going to call my person in legal, just want to verify that they authorize this, and then I'll be more than happy to solve this problem. What? Okay, so you're the director for this department. You're asking me to crack into this email account. Yeah, I'm just going to call company legal. Basically say that you are asking me to do this work and get their yay or nay on whether this is okay. If they say yay, I will be more than happy to crack into this thing. If they say nay, you get to go argue with them, right? If you have that number more or less on speed dial, it makes that whole argument with executives a hell of a lot easier, right? Because instead of saying, I don't know, I don't know if that's legal. Well, how will you know if it's legal, right? It gets stupid, right? If you can just sit there, calm as a cucumber, because you got your relationship. You know who to talk to. You were just having a beer with them a couple of weeks ago. Yes. I appreciate that you've brought this to me. I am going to give this 100% of my attention. The first thing that I'm going to do as a cybersecurity professional is I'm just going to call the legal department to verify that this is okay. Right? Makes things a hell of a lot easier for you. IT and marketing. I feel that this is actually something that's getting forgotten about nowadays. It's weird. We're surrounded by marketing, right? This whole thing about all these marketing departments or whatever know everything about us. They know our waist size, they know our age, they know our spouses. They have all of this information. But so many times with companies, from a cybersecurity perspective, marketing can be forgotten about as a major vector for attack against your company. So think about it. Your marketing department is going out there. They're grabbing lots and lots of information from all kinds of different things. Pixel tracking, people submitting forms, emails, all this kind of stuff is going into marketing databases. And one of the things that you need to understand is what information are they collecting in those marketing databases? What of that information is actually personally identifiable? And then understanding how the infrastructure is being built to verify all of this information is actually secure. Because again, imagine if your company, right? You have some young buck in the marketing department of your company. They know how to, use Python and be able to pull in information from a whole bunch of databases. What if they grab the information that they already have in your CRM solution, and then they go out and they pay one of these information companies to grab even more information, and they correlate that with the information that's already in your CRM solution. And then they use pixel tracking, and since they've already got this other information, they can then correlate information from pixel tracking, and basically they flesh out this massive database of all kinds of information about your customers. How secure is that? Has that been built securely? How easy is that for it to be compromised? Again, one of the things I talk about with PHP, I actually like PHP as a programming language because it's a relatively easy programming language. So easy a secretary can use it. And that literally was a concept back in the day, when 90s, when PHP came out. The idea was to create a programming language that was so easy a secretary could do it, so they could build their own database solutions. One of the things that gets lost in this, though, is a lot of people like to scoff at the idea of a secretary, doing any kind of coding for some reason. One of the things that gets lost is, again, with a lot of the younger generation, as time goes by, coding becomes less and less of this weird thing that nobody does. More and more people understand how to do it. And again, you get into professions such as marketing, where there's a lot of money on the table in marketing, where they can get very high quality professionals to do marketing for companies. And you think, it's very conceivable that people in the marketing department are going to figure out how to do at least basic coding, basic databases, basic coding, API calls, and all that kind of stuff. And so one of the big questions you need to be thinking about is, what the hell Frankenstein thing are they creating that could be a major vulnerability for your company? Again, I think from hackers just stealing the information in order to do extortion or something like that, to also think about this with competitors, right? Again, competition in the business world is a real thing. And so if somebody knows that somebody in your company is building out this massive database, if they can figure out how to go in, basically strip that database for all the information, right? Well, they just got a fully populated database for the cost of, whatever it costs to get in there. Things to be thinking about. And so understand what data marketing actually wants, and then explain to them the issues with things like personally identifiable information, and see if they really need that. Yeah, I know you want it, but do you need it? And then understand what systems your marketing department is using. Then we get to employees. That's right. You're going to need to sit down and have a cup of coffee with your employees. And when I say employees, warehouse workers, operations people, secretaries, sales people, marketing people, basically sit down with folks and see how they actually use their infrastructure and see what pain points they run into. Understand what the employees are supposed to do. Understand what employee job titles are. Again, with salespeople or marketing and all that kind of stuff. Understand what the company thinks that the employees are doing, and then understand what the employees actually do. Again, this is just where you sit down and you have a conversation. So you go to somebody in the marketing department, right? You go to a lower level person in the marketing department and say, hey, I'm with the cybersecurity department. I'd like to sit down and just have a cup of coffee with you, understand a little bit better how you use our infrastructure so that I can make sure it's more effective for what you're trying to do. And so you sit there and you start talking with them, and you start talking about this, and you start talking about that, right? Important things with intelligence operations is, when you're getting intelligence out of somebody, basically what you do is you ask them a whole bunch of questions, and then you grab little bits of data out of the questions, the responses to those questions, and then you put that into new questions, and then you kind of refine down to the things that you are most concerned about, right? So you sit there and like, okay, yeah, so as a new person in the marketing department, so how do you folks target advertising for the marketing? And so they sit there and like, okay, well, we buy these pixel things, and we buy this, and we buy this, and we buy this. And they sit there, oh, okay, so you buy all that stuff. So how do you you folks correlate that though? Because I've looked at our databases and all that, and there isn't actually an explicit marketing database that's supposed to have this information. So how do you do that? Oh, well, what you may not realize is we had this other system that was set up years ago by the last IT person, and so that's where our data gets dumped into. And so you look at that, it's like, okay, well, that's within the corporate infrastructure, but maybe there's a problem there. It's in the corporate infrastructure, but it hasn't been backed up in a year because IT people didn't know that it actually exists. It has no high availability, anything like that. So again, you put in your head like, oh, okay, we need to take that, right, and we need to dump that into the main infrastructure so that it's robust and resilient and all that kind of stuff. And they sit there and you keep talking about it. It's like, okay, well, how do you do this? And then one of the things you might find is like, okay, well, once you have that information, what do you do with the information? And it's like, oh, well, we do API calls to X, Y, or Z company. And like, you do API calls. So do you know, somebody set that up, so do you know what API calls do they do? Oh, yeah. So we send the person's first name, a last name, and their social security number up to this API. And you're like, what do you do? What? No, what? And then I'm sorry, wait, right? And you take all that information down, and then you figure out what they are actually doing. Again, when you sit there and you think about email services, when you think about a lot of stuff, right? Understanding what the employees are doing. Are the employees using the internal email services, or are they using their Gmail accounts? Again, so if you're in a publicly traded corporation, there's archiving that's supposed to happen of almost all communication that happens in the corporation. Something like it's supposed to be kept for about 10 years. Here's an interesting thing. You sit down and you start talking with the marketing department. And you're like, okay, yeah, just making sure, is everything working okay? You're sending a lot of emails. I just want to make sure, how are the quotas for your email system? So your email system may only allow attachments of a certain size to be sent. So if it's a marketing department, they may need to send 100 meg files, and the quota system on your email system may only allow for 10 meg files. And they say, oh, yeah, well, in order to send those 100 meg files, yeah, we all have our own Gmail accounts. Excuse me? Are those corporate Gmail accounts? No, we just set up our own individual Gmail accounts, and then, yeah, we do all the really important communication on the Gmail accounts. Oh, yeah, that's bad. That's bad. We need to give you a higher quota, and then you need to get punished for using Gmail accounts. That's what needs to happen, right? But again, these are the things that happen when you sit. And again, when I talk about having a conversation, this is not about having a conversation. I'm not talking about having a cup of coffee and then walking the hell away. You need to be having a conversation with everybody once a week. Again, when you think about actually doing an intelligence operation, I hate to say intelligence operation, it sounds so much cooler than this really is. But it really is an intelligence operation at the end of the day. One of the things you need to be thinking about is, again, long term. Sitting there, creating relationships, having cups of coffee. Every time an employee says something that you think sounds questionable, do not confront them about it. Do not say that's bad. Simply write that crap down and start doing a whole lot of research and figuring out how much of the organization does whatever dumbass crap that employee just told you that they're doing, right? Again, it's one of those things, day after day, week after week, constantly going through, talking with people, so that yards. And then understand, again, what the employees' pain points are. The biggest problem with security in so many corporations is that the employees have real and actual pain points for doing their jobs. And the executives don't care, and the IT people are so high on their own farts, they're like, this is the quota we gave you. Right? Again, you think about it, sending attachments has been a huge security issue for years, right? If you do not have a big enough size limit for sending attachments, if again, the marketing department or whatever else is trying to send large attachments, they're unable to send large attachments on the internal infrastructure. They start using an external infrastructure, their own Gmail accounts or whatever else, and all of a sudden you may have information that's going on outside of the corporate IT infrastructure. And then it's very difficult to deal with that from a cybersecurity ramification. Again, understanding pain points, like if your database is too slow. Let's say you have salespeople or you have marketing people or whoever else. They're sitting there and they're trying to go through and they're trying to deal with information in the database. They're trying to find weird little correlations so they can go after particular customers. Let's say they go to the database that's actually on your internal internet, but every time they try to access the database, it's just slow as dirt. right? Every time they go in to essentially do a SQL statement or however they're doing their query, it just takes for frickin' ever. It takes like 30 seconds every time they do a query, and it's a complete pain in the butt. Think about this. It could be a major security vulnerability if they can figure out how to essentially download your entire database onto their computer, so that now that it's on their computer, they can run their queries incredibly quickly. But the problem is, they then shut down their laptop, they take it with them when they go home. While they're going to the grocery store, somebody breaks into their car and steals their laptop. Now all of a sudden, all of their data has walked away with a thief because it's on the laptop. And so understanding what the employees' pain points are and then trying to fix those pain points. Again, as a cybersecurity thing, there's a big authoritarian, right? The bigger issue is you need to come in, you need to figure out what the problems are people are having, and then you need to solve those problems. Make everything better for the employees, and there'll be a hell of a lot easier to go along with whatever you're asking. The next thing to be thinking about is your acceptable use policies. So you're going to need policies. You're going to need written policies so everybody knows what the hell is expected of them. Tell your employees what is and is not acceptable use of electronic equipment. This is a big problem we have in the modern world because many managers and many bosses, they're kind of like modern parents. They don't want to be that authoritarian. But Eli, I want to be my employees' friends. Oh, that's so horrible. That's so horrible. You see this with a lot of bosses nowadays. They want to be the employees' friends. They want to be one of the cool kids too. Like, no, you're the boss. You are the boss. Part of being the boss is saying what can and cannot be done. And so one of the things you need to do is create an acceptable use policy, and actually state what is not supposed to be done with the equipment, whatever that may be. Going to porn sites, downloading music, using it for personal use, having personal communications. Whatever the hell, I will let you figure that out, but you need to have a policy that actually stipulates what should or should not be done with the equipment. Have the employees sign on the dotted line with that acceptable use policy. There's a weird psychological thing that happens. When people sign the dotted line for a contract or a policy, it makes it more official, it makes it more real to them, right? So if you just have a policy and you say, this is our policy, it just, whatever. If you actually get them to sign, not only do they then feel like it's more serious, but also the other employees feel that it's more serious. So again, a big thing that you're going to have to deal with any of these policies is the rest of the employee buy-in. That the culture buys into whatever disciplinary action you take against one single employee. So if all of the employees know that they signed this acceptable use policy, all the employees know that the acceptable use policy was reasonable, it wasn't frickin' idiotic, and everybody knows this Yahoo does break the acceptable use policy all the time, right? It's going to be a lot easier when you actually have to go fire that employee because everybody is going to be much more on board with that process, right? If you fire an employee that's causing you a problem, and then essentially you get 10 other employees having a snit fest for the next month, that's not necessarily going to make the company a lot better. There are many free templates available for acceptable use policy. Researching for this particular class, there's a metric crap ton of these acceptable use policies out there, so you can go just grab them. But one thing is don't just copy and paste the template. Think about what you are telling your employees to sign. Again, one of the big problems with managers and bosses nowadays, again, remember, I come at this from an owner's standpoint. A lot of people think I'm just like peeing on the employees or whatever, and I'm just with the management or whatever. I look at this as from an owner standpoint, and again, to me, y'all employees. The warehouse worker's employee, the secretary is an employee, the manager is an employee, the senior level director is an employee. All employees can be a pain in the butt at the end of the day. And so one of the big problems you have sometimes is it's like, Eli's right, we need an acceptable use policy. Oh, there's free templates. And so they'll go and they'll grab a free template, and then they'll get all their employees to sign the free template. And you're like, hey, manager, yeah. So did you read that acceptable use policy before you had all the employees sign the dotted line? Do you know what that acceptable use policy actually says? Well, I was told we need an acceptable use policy, and now we have an acceptable use policy. Again, just having a piece of paper that people sign is not actually worthwhile. You need to be thinking about why are you granting abilities to do things, and why are you taking away abilities to do things? Again, for the security of your infrastructure and for the employee buy-in. Do remember, stupid contracts breed contempt. This is one of the biggest problems I run into in the real business world is people give me contracts all the time. They give me contracts. And then I say, I'm not going to sign this. Well, why are you not going to sign this? Because have you read the contract? There's no way I can't sign this. Again, a lot of companies try to send me NDAs, non-disclosure agreements. And so again, my job is talking to a camera. I talk into a camera hours and hours and hours and hours a week. And part of my shtick is that I come at this with a real world perspective. So I throw out things like CBT nuggets as a knife throwing room. Right? Because I just know those things. That's real exists, right? So people will send me these NDAs, and they're stupid. Oh, they're just so stupid. There's no way I could sign the damn thing. There's no. But I think the funny thing is that so many people now just sign the contracts. And so the problem becomes when you have your employees and anybody else sign these stupid contracts, is that at the end of the day, they become so used to signing stupid contracts that they sign contracts without even reading what the hell it is that they're signing the contract for. And then there's a good chance they're not really abiding by whatever terms of service or contract that you're presenting to them. Remember, when you deal with things like contracts, like whenever we're talking about contracts or policies, signing the dotted line, there's this whole idea about when this goes to court, right? When this goes to court. Here's the thing, lawyers can cost $350 an hour. My last lawyer was $350 an hour. One of the lawyers I had to hire once, it's $1,000 an hour. $1,000 per hour. Oh, golly. So that's real. So one of the things you have to think about is with contracts and policies, this really isn't about when you go to court. Nobody wants to go to court. You go to court, and that is thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars that is coming out of your pocket that you're most likely not going to get back, right? If you sue your employee, you're going to sue your employee. It's going to cost your company $20,000 to sue your employee. And what are you going to get? I don't know, their last paycheck or something back? So the point is not actually to be taking employees or whatever else to court. The concept here, the thing is that you have the concept of court over their heads. You have something that is reasonable, and therefore everybody can say, look, we have reasonable rules, you sign the reasonable rules. If you violate the reasonable rules, we have the ability, right? So it's a threat, we have the ability to take you to court. Then you're like, yeah, I don't want to go to court. Napster, getting free music on my Windows 95 laptop is not worth the company suing me or doing something else or firing me or whatever, right? So one of the big things with any kind of policies that you're going to be creating is that all the management sits down, they actually write out these policies so they make a darn bit of sense. They talk with the employees so they understand where the employees are coming from so they can also get buy-in from the employees, and everybody agrees this makes sense. People should not be going to Pornhub on the company's laptops. Can we all agree, at least publicly? Is anybody in a conference room going to disagree about whether employees should be able to go to Pornhub on their company laptops? Okay, now that we agreed on that, right, go from there. Again, written policies are incredibly important, within the company. Having written policy keeps everybody on the same page. One of the big problems you have, again, you have a lot of different managers, you have a lot of different leadership in a company. Certain managers, certain leadership care about certain things, they don't care about other things. One of the problems there that creates for employees is they don't know what master to serve. Is that racist? Am I allowed to say that? Anyways, they don't know what master to serve, right? So if they're sitting there and they're doing a project and there are two people in leadership positions that at any one point in time may have more or less control over the particular project, if they have different rules on things like cybersecurity and the rest of it, it's going to create a mess, right? If this person is a stickler, now we will only use corporate approved, IT and the whole 9 yards, and then this person is swiping their credit card and using Dropbox and whatever else whenever they want, that's going to create a mess for the employees that are trying to work within that environment. So having written policies keeps everybody on board. The employees, the managers, everybody can look at the policy and they know what policy they're supposed to be abiding abiding by. Again, written policies makes discipline easier. If you have a written policy and somebody violates the written policy, it's a hell of a lot easier to document and give them a disciplinary action so you can get up to 3 and hopefully fire them before they do something really asininely stupid, right? If you don't have a written policy, if you go into discipline somebody, again, this is where it comes from the HR perspective. If somebody is using shadow IT, right, they're using Dropbox or some service they're not supposed to, if they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing, but there's no policy against it, how do you discipline that employee? That employee isn't violating any policies. Be a big mess. Have a formal review process for policies with timed revisions and updates. Again, think about this with technology. Technology changes quite a bit. We go from one type of architecture to another type of architecture. You know, we have smartphones, we have all kinds of different things, right? One of the things you need to be thinking about with your written employee policies is that you actually update these things, most likely about every 6 months. What is things like acceptable use policies, things like acceptable, you know, how they're going to be using networking equipment, how they're going to be dealing with personally identifiable information, all of that kind of thing. Because if you don't update these policies, because that's what happens with a lot of companies, right? They wrote these policies back in 2015. It's now 2021, and the world has massively changed. And so the policies no longer match with the IT infrastructure that they're actually dealing with. And so just simply coming up with a formal process for just going through, making sure the rules, making sure the policies are actually up to date is incredibly valuable. The next thing to be thinking about is what the hell is your social media policy? So this is a big thing I've been bringing up a lot lately. Cancel culture is real. Cancel culture is real. And everybody nowadays will not shut up about what they believe about everything, right? What I believe, they will tell the entire world. Now again, here I am not arguing for or against First Amendment rights. I'm not arguing here about free speech. But one of the big problems that we have with a lot of people that are telling the world whatever the hell it is that they believe about anything is that they let everybody know where they work. I think this is hilarious. I think this is absolutely, from a cybersecurity standpoint, I think it's hilarious. Like LinkedIn seems to be like one of the worst ideas to me. That basically everybody in your company is on LinkedIn and they literally state that they work for your company and they state what exactly they do for your company, and that is all very searchable on LinkedIn. Well, here's the thing. They go out and they say something stupid. Whether it's your HR person, whether it's your PR person, whether it's your senior level admin. They go out, they say whatever the hell they're gonna say, and all of a sudden the cancel culture mob comes after them. If they make it very clear who the hell they work for, that cancel culture mob is gonna come after you. And again, I can tell you, having been an owner, as an owner, I have taxes to deal with, I have regulations to deal with, I have customers to deal with, I have all of my employees to deal with, I have contractors to deal with, I have vendors to deal with, I have a whole bunch of stuff. All of a sudden, my company starts getting targeted for hate because something one employee said. Let's be honest. Let's go beyond the morals. Let's go beyond the ethics. Let's get away from all that kindergarten crap that we're taught when we're children. At the end of the day, I have a metric crap ton of stuff I have to deal with on my plate. This employee decided they're going to do something asininely stupid on the internet. They made it clear who they worked for, and now I, as boss or cybersecurity person or whatever else, we are getting just a tremendous amount of hate targeting our company. You know the easiest way to deal with that? I like your shoes. How dare you come into my company wearing those Nike shoes? You are fired. I got fired for cancel culture. No, you did not get fired for cancel culture. You got fired for what your shoes look like. Right? That's reality. So one of the things you need to be thinking about is like, what is the social media policy for your employees on their own time? One of the big things that I would say is don't say you work for my company. Do not say you work for my company. After you leave, after you find a much better job and we part ways amicably, by all means put that you used to work for my company. Do not say that you currently work for my company, because I don't want to deal with any of this crap. Make sure employees understand where the company stands on things. Again, this is important, right? It's not just activist employees anymore, it's also activist companies. Again, it's interesting here being in North Carolina. I live in Asheville, North Carolina, and it's very weird. Like, Asheville is very blue. It's like Smurf blue. It's like Smurf cannibal blue. It's Smurfs eating Smurfs to become even bluer. Anyways, it's very blue here. But if you go like 40 minutes that way, it's big Trump signs. Big Trump signs on the sides of businesses. All right, so when we talk about activism, one of the important things to understand nowadays is it's not just for employees anymore. Sometimes companies are very activist too. Now, the large companies, the IBM doesn't necessarily want to be activist. Like that kind of size company may not want to be activist. But if you're in a 50-person company, if you're in a 100-person company, right? If you are dealing with cybersecurity for an auto dealership, in the middle of Texas, they may be very activist in a different way that cancel culture wants to think about. And so one of the things that you need to tell your employees, and you also need to understand, is where does the company, again, where does the CEO fall on these activist things? Some of these CEOs would be more than happy if their employees go on there, make it known who they work for, and tell the other side of the equation to go get bunked. Other companies, as soon as you say anything, they're going to get scared and fire you. So it's important for the employees to understand where the company itself stands. Do you want employees putting who they currently work for on social media? Again, I know nowadays this seems laughable. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean not put who I currently work for? But think about it. If you say something stupid, I remember this. That's the whole thing. Like, one of the reasons I stopped using Twitter. So I barely use Twitter anymore. I actually got rid of my Twitter account, and now I have one just for Silicon Dojo purposes. But one of the reasons I got rid of Twitter a couple of years ago is I saw somebody that I relatively respect. Anybody knows this person? Hey, relatively respectful. Hey, relatively smart. Relatively respectful. Anyway, lost their mind on Twitter. Lost their mind on Twitter. Got fired. Oh, it was horrible. It was one of those weird things where you just sit there with a reasonable person in the tech world, and you just see them lose their mind. You're like, what the hell? Anyways, they lost some consulting gigs, they lost some contracts, because the companies that were associated with them didn't want a damn thing to do with their Twitter meltdown. And so again, this is something to be thinking about, right? If you were a senior level admin, or you're a cybersecurity person, or you're HR, or whatever else, and you say something stupid on the internet, you melt down on Twitter, but people don't really know who you work for, then that's not necessarily a vector for attack. If you post who you work for, it can be a problem. And then don't friend coworkers. I think this is a big one in the modern world. Don't friend coworkers. So remember, different social media sites have different useful utility, right? YouTube is a modern TV. Twitter is, I don't even know what Twitter is. I still don't know what Twitter is for. Twitter apparently is like a psychological meltdown tool. I don't know. LinkedIn is for business stuff, and Facebook is for interpersonal things. One of the big things that I would say, again, in the modern world, especially with activists and all that kind of thing, is that a lot of people don't share their opinions publicly. Again, I don't share a lot of my opinions publicly. Now, to be clear, I am literally dedicating my professional life to creating gatekeeperless, authorityless, free to the end user tech education that empowers you people to do whatever the hell it needs you want to do, right? This is what I'm literally doing. And yet, some of my viewpoints apparently are wrong. I apparently am on the wrong side of history. If you ever watch any of my live videos, I talk about this, basically being a greedy satanic Nazi, because a lot of people think that I'm a greedy satanic Nazi, even though every single day I come in to create the kind of education that I do. Right? I just have viewpoint. Like, when I look at problems, I come to different solutions than other people come to. Again, deindustrialize. I don't understand why deindustrializing the United States helps disadvantaged people. I'm kind of lost on that concept. Anywho, not going to get into that. But one of the big problems you can have is that if you have coworkers, and some of the coworkers are not very vocal about what they believe normally, when people friend each other on Facebook, and all of a sudden they start seeing posts and start seeing shares and they start seeing all this other stuff from their other coworkers within the organization, you can have a whole bunch of insanity ensue. I can't believe you voted for X, Y, or Z, right? You can have two people that have been sitting there, they've been coding together for a year now, they've been creating beautiful projects, and then all of a sudden one of them finds out that the other one voted for the wrong person, and all hell ensues. What does that have to do with your company? Nothing. What does that have to do with your project? Nothing. What does that have to do with the professional qualifications of both parties? Nothing. but you're gonna get a pissing session regardless. And so again, this is one of the things you have to be thinking about from a cybersecurity standpoint is what within the technology realm will deteriorate your company in one way or the other. Again, I've talked about this before when you're thinking about securing your company from ransomware. If you secure your company from a hurricane or a wildfire or a theft or ransomware, it's the same security measures, right? If you're making sure all of your data basically gets auto-uploaded off-site into some kind of disaster recovery as a service solution, then whether a tornado takes out your database or a ransomware attack takes out your database, you simply spin up the database as it existed an hour ago up on your disaster recovery as a service, you point everybody there, then you clean up your local infrastructure, and then you bring it back down, right? Again, as a cybersecurity professional, you can solve for many problems essentially with one solution. Again, when we start thinking about things like social media policies, there are a lot of vectors for attack with your social media policies. If people understand, if hackers know who your senior level administrators are, they may try to start doing spear phishing attacks against your senior level administrators. If your senior level administrators start saying stupid crap on Twitter, then the cancel culture knows what company to attack, right? When you think about these social media policies, think about them as from a larger context than simply, again, the normal things that you might be thinking about. Again, from Thomson Reuters, cancel culture in the workplace, new challenges and risks for compliance, HR, and boards. Freedom of expression in the workplace, whether on issues of race, diversity, or hiring policies, may present new challenges for corporate managers and compliance and human resources professionals, given the increased tensions and social unrest seen across the United States. How companies handle employees' rights to express their views on divisive issues, the risk posed to organizations, and threats of what some call an emergent cancel culture, where certain opinions are deemed hostile to the mainstream and should be dismissed or disallowed, all pose a complex web of issues and potential legal liability concerns. Again, when you start thinking about cybersecurity, right? Again, any kind of threat that might come from your infrastructure. There are some people nowadays, again, I'm not getting on either side of this particular argument, that feel words are violence. I'm not getting in there. I'm just putting this on the table. To be clear, I'm putting this on the table, and then we will discuss, right? So again, in the modern world, in the United States, an employer, right, by law is supposed to provide a safe environment for their employees. So again, people from my generation feel that means that there's a fire extinguisher, that there's a fire escape, there's a sprinkler system, right? That's a safe environment, that we're not working in a building full of asbestos. That's how we used to think of a safe environment. And so a lot of people, we all get what that is. But again, in this modern world, a lot of people now feel words are violence. So what happens when people are using social media, or they're using any other communication tools, they are saying whatever the hell that they're saying, how is that going to be taken by other employees? Again, something to be thinking about here from your company perspective. If you have one employee on company property look at another employee on company property and say a whole bunch of bad stuff at him, not even gonna go close, you fill in the blank, right? You probably have normal policies on how to deal with that. Here's an interesting question. What happens if an employee on their personal private Facebook account says basically the exact same words to another employee on their personal private Facebook account? How does that fall within your company policies? Again, and then what if it's precipitated by different things? What if this person says something to them, and they said something to them, and they said something to them, and then they said, well, blah, 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 blah. Where does that all fall out? It's things that you need to be thinking about. Then you need to have standards of discipline. This is a big problem, again, in the more modern corporate world, is bosses, much like modern parents, want to be everybody's friends. What do you mean discipline? I would never smack my child. He's my friend. Yeah, that might be the problem, right? But this is something you need to be thinking about. Again, if you have rules, if you have policies, there needs to be punishment for breaking those rules and policies. If you have rules and policies and there is no punishment that goes along with it, then you essentially don't have any rules and policies as far as it matters. You need to have the punishments, right? Because again, having employees, you sit there, you tell them what's wrong, you tell them why it's wrong, they sit there and they just agree with you. And then the next day they're doing the exact same crap, right? They got to be worried about something. They got to be worried about losing their job. They got to be worried about losing their vesting in the company or something like that. There needs to be some kind of punishment. Or again, think about it with kids. If you tell a kid not to steal cookies out of the cookie jar, and then they steal a cookie out of the cookie jar and you don't do anything, and then right in front of you they steal a cookie out of the cookie jar and you still don't do anything, and then they just take the entire cookie jar to their room and then you still don't do anything. Then they're going to come out and they're going to start demanding, the cookie jar's empty. When are you going to fill the cookie jar again? You're like, but Timmy, you broke the rules. I told you the rule was not to steal cookies. Well, give me more cookies. That's how it works in the real world, right? Document what the punishments are and why they're being implemented. Again, things to be thinking about. Acceptable use policies for computers. So you have a salesperson, they go home, they start going to Pornhub, and their computer gets infected with whatever the hell else, right? Because they're going to nefarious websites. Here's the thing, you need to document what the punishment is and why they're being punished. This salesperson is going to be taken off. They're going to be given 3 days of unpaid leave because they broke this policy. Our IT department is having to wipe and reload their computer. That wipe and reload process is going to cost the company X hundred numbers of dollars, and so that is why we're having this process. If our salesperson does something that damages their ability to actually do their job, then the punishment is they're going to get a couple of days off. If they don't want to do their job so badly, they're going to get a couple of days off. And if they don't like it, they can leave, right? But you need to document what the punishments are, and you need to document why they are being implemented. Make discipline actions as public as possible. There are legal considerations here. Again, one of the big things is whenever you have to do discipline, if you do discipline in secret, nobody else knows about it, right? One of the big ideas with disciplinary actions is that it acts as a form of prevention from other people doing it, right? If one salesperson looked at Pornhub and they got 3 days off of work unpaid, then somebody else who might like looking at Pornhub, and they've got a wife, they got a couple of kids, and they got a mortgage, all of a sudden they know that if their computer gets infected by going to Pornhub or whatever else, one, the company will know about it, and two, they're going to get a couple of days off of work, right? That acts as a demotivating factor to keep them from wanting to do something that's against the policy. One of the big problems we have right now is that so much of the disciplinary action now, there's so much secrecy around disciplinary action, nobody knows who's getting disciplined for what, and so don't actually understand what the company cares about. Now again, there are legal considerations with this, that's why you need to go talk with your legal department about any of this kind of stuff. Figure out what you can or cannot say, right? Okay, this person is being punished for violating acceptable use policies. Maybe that's all you can say, right? They're being punished for violating acceptable use policies, they're getting 3 days off, blah, that's it. Now, of course, people are going to go and talk with them, and then they can say what they actually did. You have to be careful about discretion. So one of the big problems, especially in criminal justice in the United States, is discretion. Our entire criminal justice system, there's discretion at every level of it, from the police officer to the prosecutor to the judge. They all get to use their discretion on what's going to happen to the person that's in front of them. This causes all kinds of problems, right? Because basically what discretion is it's your opinion. You have two people that committed the exact same crime, and this person is let go, this person spends 5 years in jail. Discretion. I believe, in my discretion, I believe this person is more dangerous than that person. Is there any scientific basis for that? Is there any quantifiable basis to that? Or is it just qualifiable? I don't like the look of that person's face. We're going to ignore the color of that person's skin. Anywho, their shoes. They're spending 5 years in jail because they wore the wrong shoe. And that's true. So much of our American system, you could literally just say, it's because of somebody's shoes. and it would be true. Oh, why is that? Why is that person spending 5 years in jail and another person, wasn't even arrested? Because of their shoes. That's discretion. So anyways, we are dealing with the modern world. We're dealing with the modern world. We got the Me Too movement going on. We got BLM going on. We got all kinds of activism going on. So one of the things you have to understand is if you start using discretion as part of your disciplinary process, then understand that is racism, that is sexism, that is ableism, and that is ism-ism. What? I am not an ism-isist. Well then, why did this person get punished and that person didn't get punished? Well, in my discretion. So it's an ist of some sort. And that's going to be one of the issues that you're going to run into. Again, you think about this from that whole social media, again, the culture mindset. If employees start to feel that people are being disciplined simply because of, what shoes they decide to wear, right? You're a shoeist. Then how likely are they to care about the entire discipline process that you have? Things to think about. One of the last things on this is it worth the argument to start arguing with people about why there are certain rules? This is a big problem right now. Again, we now have this debate culture in the modern world with social media and everything else. Everybody wants to debate everything. The problem is, right, you can have a 14-year-old screaming at a PhD that they need to debate each other, right? I'm a human just like you, so therefore I have the right to debate you on astrophysics. It's like, yeah, but I have a PhD in astrophysics, and you still think Pluto is a planet. So, this is a big problem that you can run into. So one of the things you need to be thinking about is whenever you do have some of these policies that you're going to have, is how much argument do you want to put into it if some of your employees start pushing back on specific policies. Again, whether or not they should be able to use YouTube, whether or not they should be able to use Facebook, whether or not they should be able to use Reddit, whether or not they should be able to use the dark web or whatever else. Something to think about is sometimes because is an appropriate answer. Right? Again, I know this goes a little bit against a lot of what I've been saying with creating relationships and having conversations and explaining as much as possible. But sometimes, especially in the technology world, a lot of the things that we're dealing with get really complicated really quickly. And so sometimes it's just because. The reason that we're doing this is because. One of the problems you can run into is, again, we have this debate culture nowadays. And remember, in debate culture, you always lose. If you are the cybersecurity professional for your company and you start getting into one of these asinine debates with employees, warehouse worker or whatever else, at the end of the day, you're going to lose. Because the point is to get you into a position where you start second guessing whatever it is that you're talking about, and for them to get whatever they want. Access to YouTube, access to Facebook, access to whatever they think they should have access to. So one of the things you need to be thinking about is sometimes, just like with parents, again, most of the time with parents, you need to explain to your kid what they did wrong, why that's a bad thing, and what the punishment is. Every once in a while, you have a lot of crap to deal with. You don't really have the time to explain to your kids what's exactly is going on. So sometimes you just say, because. You can't do this because. Fighting is more fun than working. Again, with a lot of the arguments nowadays, you have a lot of employees that come onto the job and they don't. It is actually controversial to now state that an employee's job is to bring profit to the company. Oh! Right? That statement right there, that is controversial. I might get canceled over that kind of crap. It is really weird. In the modern world, especially in a lot of technology companies, a lot of the concept of profit and the value of employees has gotten all kinds of mucked up. And so a lot of employees really just don't grasp the concept that they are employed by the company to bring the company more profit. Just hard stop. That's why they're there. And so one of the big things to be thinking about is a lot of times fighting is more fun than working. Screaming about a cybersecurity policy, screaming about how dare the company says I can't say X, Y, or Z on my social media account with the name of my company underneath, right? And that's a good old fun fight. Racking servers suck. Writing really complicated code sucks. Doing a lot of the job for what tech companies and everything else, that sucks to do. Screaming, having a good old fashioned fight about politics or whatever else, that's that's just good old-fashioned fun. And so one of the issues you can deal with is if you start arguing with your employees about certain policies, again, try to explain as much as possible. Once you get to the end, like, look, those are the reasons, accept it or quit, right? If you keep going, all of a sudden it turns into this massive fight, and then everybody joins different sides of this massive fight, and then you have this huge roar going on in your company, and you're not actually shipping product. When people, push back with whatever you're saying, you can't do X, Y, or Z, try to deal with the issue in private. Again, something else that's not done a lot anymore. Sometimes you can take feedback from employees or whatever, you can smile, you can not say anything else to them, you can walk back to the corporate boardroom, and then you can have a discussion about whether or not, again, that policy that you have in place is really still a good idea at this particular time, right? We put this policy in place 2 years ago. We are now having problems with the employees complying with this policy. Is it that the employees are being a-holes, or is it that this policy is just, its sell-by date is passed and we need to get rid of this particular policy? But deal with it in private. As again, you need your employees. You need employees to ship product, not argue about a lot of this stuff. And business is a decision. One of the big things to think about is what do both sides actually care about? One of the big things going on right now, again, we are in the age of ego. Everybody wants to thump their chest and say how amazing they are. The CEO does, the warehouse worker does, the cybersecurity professional does, the whole 9 yards. One of the big things you need to really be thinking about, again, with cybersecurity policies and all this kind of stuff, is what is actually important to the company? What is actually required to ship product for the company? What is actually a detriment to the company's infrastructure? Actually sit down and think about all those things and come to the decisions. Again, if you go to an employee and basically say, we need you to follow this policy, and they go, well, if you want me to follow this policy, I'm going to quit. Here's the problem. If you haven't really thought through the policies, if you haven't really thought through the business processes and all that, and your employee threatens to quit, right, that's a threat. Oh no, what are we going to do if this employee quits? Well, here's the thing. If you've thought through all this, you've thought about the value of the employee, you know what the employee brings, you know how hard it would be to replace the employee, whole 9 yards, and you go to the employee, look, you need to follow this policy. And they, well, if you make me follow this policy, I'm going to quit. And you look at them, okay, what? Bye, so you quit, okay. So what time is it? Okay, so you quit on, no, you said you quit, right? But again, if you actually think through all of this kind of stuff, it makes a lot of these processes a hell of a lot easier. One of the big things also to be thinking about when you're dealing with cybersecurity or any of this kind of thing is think about separation of authority. I've seen this in the real business world. It's a douchey way to do things. It's so douchey, but it's so effective. It's an effective douche. So one of the big problems you're going to have, right, is again, nobody likes to be the bad person. Nobody likes to be the bad person. So whenever anybody comes up with rules and whenever anybody disciplines somebody else, it's really hard because they don't want to be the disciplinarian. They don't want to seem like the bad person at the company. And so one of the issues you're going to have is if the cybersecurity person or the IT person or whatever is also responsible for doing disciplinary actions against normal users of the company, that can cause a real issue because the IT person, the cybersecurity person probably already has a number of issues dealing with people in the company, and then the more people that they discipline, that it directly goes back to, this is why the employees getting disciplined, that means the more pissed off that the users, the employees at the companies are going to be towards the technology professionals, and it all kind of goes to hell. So one of the things you can do is you can separate out the authority. You can separate out the process of disciplining employees so that there's no one person to target, right? So if a manager goes to the employee and says, hey employee, I need to sit you down. I need to so that you understand you are being written up for violating our policy against going to Pornhub. Right? I need you to sign here so that you know that you have violated this particular policy, and if you do it, a couple more times, you're gonna be fired. I can't believe it. Are you spying on me on my off hours? See, here's the thing. If you separate out the authority, then the manager's like, no man, I'm not spying on you. Look, I do not care if you go to Pornhub, to be honest with you. Honestly, I think everybody would be far more more relaxed in this company if they all went to Pornhub on their off hours. But this is coming from the higher level, heads or whatever, division heads, and I was just told that I need you to sign this paperwork. And see, by separating out, basically, if you can separate out the process, so you separate out the people that actually catch that a violation occurred, right? So let's say your cybersecurity people, whatever, they catch that people are going to Pornhub on their off hours, right? So they take that, then they take that information, and then they give that to a department head. So then the department head is simply told, these people went to Pornhub with their work computers when they're at home, and then they look at whatever the punishments or the policies are, and then they write up a disciplinary action. And then that disciplinary action is sent down to the frontline manager, and the frontline manager then tells the employee to sign, basically because they're being punished for doing this thing. And see, by separating all these things out, no one person is responsible for smacking that employee on the wrist for going to Pornhub. You've separated out that whole continuum for the punishment, and that can be a lot easier in the corporate world. I actually had a buddy of mine back when I did martial arts. He apparently got paid a lot of very good money to fly around the country and fire people. That was his actual job. That's all I did. He would just come in, he would spend like 4 hours in the morning firing people, and then hop on a plane and go home. I guess here's the thing, nobody likes to fire people. Again, this is what a lot of employees don't understand. Firing people sucks. Nobody wants to fire people. Again, everybody wants to be everybody's friends. And so what this person found was his niche. As he was quite effective at firing people. And so what would happen with these companies? The companies would need to downsize, companies would need to terminate employees that weren't, had too many disciplinary infractions. Basically, companies just need to fire folks. And the thing is the managers felt very uncomfortable firing these people that they knew for a long time. A lot of people felt very uncomfortable firing. Even though they knew somebody had to be fired, somebody had to be disciplined, nobody felt comfortable doing it. So they hired him to hop on a plane and go all around the country just firing crap tons of people, and that was literally his job. And it was good for him, right? Because he wasn't really part of the company. He was not part of the decision-making process. Somebody could beg, somebody could plead, somebody could scream at him, and he had no way to revoke the termination. He was simply told, this person has to, legally, somebody has to sit in front of this person to fire him. We're paying you to do it, right? And so by having that separation of all these tasks as far as disciplinary actions go, that can be valuable for your company. Then let's go into some of the tools that can be used when we're dealing with employees and we're dealing with cybersecurity in the real world. One of the big things nowadays is digital surveillance of video and audio. So this is something you're going to need to be thinking about, is basically how do you surveil, how do you monitor your employees, and how do you monitor interactions to make sure that they're not doing something asininely stupid with the infrastructure or whatever else. One of the big things is you can have video surveillance within your environment, and then what I would argue is you make sure everybody knows that there's video surveillance, right? It's kind of weird. Like, a lot of people like conspiracy theories. Like, do you know that they're videoing us? Right? A conspiracy theory is much cooler, all right? And people like to talk about it a lot more than a known fact. Right? If you have a whole bunch of video cameras all set up within your premises, and then you have a big old dashboard, you have a big old 100-inch screen somewhere where everybody can see it with all of the different cameras, then everybody knows that they're being videoed. This can be very useful to deter people from doing things stupid. Again, when you're thinking about cybersecurity, one of the big things is making sure people are not illegitimately accessing the server room, that they're not illegitimately accessing, network closets or that kind of thing. Having those surveillance cameras up can be very valuable. Again, something to be thinking about though, with cybersecurity and trying to add value, so the CEO, sees a value in what you're doing, is adding additional cameras around just so you can see how people are interacting with each other. Again, things like sexual harassment nowadays. If you have a he said, she said situation where she says he grabbed her ass, right? That's very difficult from a management standpoint. Oh, crap. How am I going to deal with this? I don't really have any evidence, right? We have to believe the woman, but everybody deserves their day in court. and there's no evidence one way or the other. That sucks as a manager. So one of the things to be thinking about, like with digital surveillance, is you put up your surveillance cameras. You put up your surveillance cameras in the server room. You put up your surveillance cameras outside the server room. You put up your surveillance cameras for all the normal IT places where you're worried about somebody trying to come in and do something stupid. But then as you're doing this, you add, a number of other surveillance cameras, and these surveillance cameras are constantly running. So if she says he grabbed her butt at 10:05 on Tuesday, the executive can go to the video, can pull up 10:05 on Tuesday, and can say, okay, there's her butt, and there's his hand, and you're fired. Makes life a hell of a lot easier. But again, one of the big things I would say there is actually setting it up so that people see that they're being surveilled. Again, and this will go back to a cultural thing, right? Is that if you have employees that feel, or if you have people that want to get hired by your company, but they feel that constant surveillance on premises is a bad thing, then hopefully that they don't get hired. Again, it's easier to deal with employees before they're hired, and so therefore they don't become employees, than to deal with pissed off employees once they're actually already employees. So you have stuff like this set up, look, and again, it's also how you sell it. It's how you sell it, right? We have, a high quality video surveillance system for the entire environment for the safety of our people. We use this for IT security issues and for things like HR complaints. If you come to us with an HR complaint, we are going to have video, and again, with a lot of these video systems, you can have audio, and you just tell people how it is, right? This is what we have. If somebody says, look, somebody said sexually suggestive things at 11 o'clock on Wednesday, you pull up the camera, you pull up the microphone, you hear what is said, right? Can make life a lot easier. Another thing to be thinking about, again, from the digital surveillance type world, is one of the big questions you're going to have to be asking yourself as a cybersecurity professional is how are users going to be able to fully identify each other in a Zoom world? Right? We are now in the post-COVID world. Whatever happens with COVID by 2024, it will still always be the post-COVID world. COVID was a black swan event. It has massively changed how business is done. One of the things is there's a lot of security that is built in to a normal business environment, right? If you have a building, if people have to come into the building, if they know each other in the building, there's a lot of security protocols that are there that people just simply take for granted, right? Knowing, oh, yes, I know you were at the help desk. I may not know your name, but I've seen you at the help desk. Right? Every time I walk by. Oh, I may not know where you work in the company, but I do know your name because we drink coffee at the same time, right? There's a lot of security built in there. One of the questions you have to ask yourself is what happens when your employees start communicating to each other through Zoom? What happens when your employees never meet each other? They never have coffee together, right? They never go and have a happy hour together. They don't do whatever else together. One of the questions you have to be asking yourself is how can you create a verification process so that people really know that the person on the other side of the camera for things like Zoom is actually who they think they are. I found this kind of little app thing kind of interesting from this company called SumSub, and basically with this they have a whole ID suite that can be built into a video communication application so that you literally know who is on the other side. So basically, if somebody comes in front of the Zoom screen or the Zoom quasi-Zoom screen, they come in front of that video feed, their application can then essentially take a screenshot of their face. They can compare that screenshot against the employees in the company, and then that comes back in real time and it says this person is this employee at the company, and so you feel a little bit more secure talking to this person. Again, when we talk about the Twitter hack, I think it was of last year, so Twitter was hacked. I hate to call it a hack, it was so horrible. Florida boy was able to call basically people at Twitter, pretend that he was somebody that he wasn't in order to gain access to people's Twitter accounts, right? One of the reasons that he was able to do that is simply the identification process was simply him saying, hi, I am whoever he said he was, and the person said, okay, sure, I will reset that password, right? Does that make sense from a cybersecurity? Does that make sense from a company the size of Twitter as a cybersecurity policy? Right, right? Whereas if you have an internal communication system that actually has identification built into it, then again, an employee can communicate with a help desk. So you now know in order to communicate with the help desk, you have to use a special app. This app then, as soon as you're communicating with the help desk, this app does a screenshot of the face, identifies you as who you are, what your rights and responsibilities are, and prints that out for the help desk so that they can determine things, right? This can be very valuable in the modern world. And again, this is where we need to start thinking about how we can use the technology that we have in this post-COVID environment. Email scanning is an incredibly valuable thing. Again, a lot of people nowadays, they communicate over email. And one of the things you have to think about is, the more people do something, the more likely they are in the future. It's easiest from a disciplinary mindset to be able to punish somebody as quickly as possible. And one of the big problems you can have in a lot of the corporate world is people say some asininely stupid crap in email or any communication. Again, do you remember when I say email? Communication nowadays is about more than email. Email, Slack, Teams, all kinds of different ways to communicate, right? And so one of the things that you find is a lot of the people, they say really horrible things out loud. Also say really horrible things in email. And the thing is, if people are communicating back and forth and they're saying really horrible things in email, and they get used to that, and then it can be a problem when they get together or they're talking with other people, and then other employees feel bad, right? If you have employees that are emailing back and forth about what other employees that they would like to have sex with, right? Oh, that just opens up a whole bunch of badness, right? I do not want my employees discussing which employees they want to have sex with. Hey, you are human, you should definitely want to have sex, do it off company time. Off company time. Use Pornhub on your own computer at home, not my computer. But anyways, right? And so one of the things to be thinking about is if you have email scanning solutions, so Office 365 actually has some really awesome email scanning solutions. There's a lot of email scanning and communication scanning solutions out there. Basically, it can bounce emails for things like objectionable words, basically bounce those emails back to the person that sent the email and then notify the user that the email was logged, right? So back in the day, again, 10, 12 years ago, we started to see this with bad word filters, right? A lot of corporations decided that they didn't want their employees saying F this and S that and mutter futter that, and right? They just felt it was not good for the corporate environment. So if you use swear words within your email will get bounced back, and the administrator would log that. And so this is something that's a pretty simple solution that you can plug into your system, and that also just reminds people that you are on the company equipment, and the company equipment is monitoring what you're doing, so keep it clean. So kind of think about that from the email scanning thing. Because again, like if you have employees are saying like who they want to have sex with, that's just going to end bad. BYOD. So I think a lot of the cybersecurity issues that we're having now in the modern world actually go back to BYOD. So BYOD is bring your own device. This is what the iPhone brought to the corporate world. And so what BYOD basically means is a lot of employees back in the day, they started buying these really fancy smartphones. They started doing email on smartphones and communication on smartphones and doing all that kind of stuff on the smartphones. Corporations realized that, hey, they could compensate their employees for their phone plan, but not actually pay for the phone and save the company a lot of money, right? If your iPhone costs $1,000, then what the company can do is say, we will pay your monthly fee for the phone. So they would have to pay that anyway if they gave you a phone. But your phone is yours, right? So they save $1,000 a pop for every phone that they don't have to buy. The thing was, then everybody started bringing their phones in, everybody started bringing their tablets and all these devices into the internal IT network. All of these devices, as soon as you connect them to the network, they were able to see everything, Active Directory servers, Exchange servers, SharePoint servers, the whole 9 yards, and then you get a whole bunch of massive security issues because of it. And so you run into a lot of problems with this. One of the big things to ask yourself with the whole BYOD thing is if they own it, what rules can you have? So I think this is one of the big problems in the corporate world. Like a lot of the CFOs, a lot of the executives out there, they always see how they can make money. And again, they always think they can put employees under their thumbs. So like, yeah, we're going to tell them how they can use their iPhones that they purchased, that they bought for $1,000. How well is that going to work? And again, one thing to be thinking about is even if you have the rule, if the employees don't actually pay attention to the rule, how well does that help? One of the big things I would say with BYOD is create a separate network for your BYOD devices. So this is something called parallel networking. So again, with BYOD, this came in at the same time as something called convergence. The idea with convergence is to have all of your computerized equipment using the same type of typology. So IP surveillance cameras, voice over IP telephones, IP access control systems, obviously your computers and your servers and all that kind of stuff. All of that would use one unified network. And that was stupid. That was stupid. So the idea was it was all going to use TCP/IP, it was all going to use Ethernet, it was all going to run through the same networking equipment. The problem is when you have your voice over IP phones on the same network as your digital surveillance system, on the same network as somebody running their cryptocurrency scheme or whatever else, you have all kinds of stupid issues. So what people realized was much better, instead of having one single converged network, that you have parallel networks. So you have an IP network for your surveillance system, an IP network for your phones, an IP network for your access control, an IP network for your computers and servers and all that kind of stuff. And then basically over here on the network diagram, they all get connected by a router. So instead of them all being on the same network, they're all on their individual subnets, essentially. And then they can communicate with each other through a router, but therefore it stops a lot of problems. I would argue that with all the BYOD devices, if you are going to have, with BYOD, it's generally like a wireless network. If you're going to have a wireless network that BYOD devices are able to connect into, it should be its own layer of a network. So this is 192.168.5.x network. And this is all the BYOD devices, and they are going to get to the email server, they're going to get to anything else through a layered network, through a router, through a firewall, making sure that the BYOD devices can't actually see everything else on the network. Something to think about. And then with the BYOD issues, things to think about is building a zero trust infrastructure. One of the big problems we have in the cybersecurity world right now is we still have a high trust. We have infrastructure built under the high trust model in a zero trust world. The high trust model is basically the idea is that you trust all the devices on your network. So again, back in the old days, NG4 or whatever, so you had a very slow internet connection. You had literally T1 and 1.544 for the entire business. You had all of the computers on the network were actually members of the domain. People didn't have BYOD devices. It was a pretty high trust. Basically, you trusted everything, more or less, you trusted everything on the network. The problem is that's not being a good way to build networks, at least a decade ago. But the problem is we still have these networks that are built this way. Again, basically they're built for high trust environments when a lot of the devices on the network cannot be trusted. You do not know what these devices are doing. So one of the things with BYOD is you start to try to build a zero trust infrastructure where the idea is any of the hosts on your network could be completely compromised. And the question is how do you make sure that your system and your infrastructure is still secure, even if you go by the default thought that something is completely compromised on your network? Something to consider there. Then we go to shadow IT. Oh, this sucks. This sucks. Credit card based infrastructure. Yes, sir, I would like one of those. Shrink. So the good thing about back when I was doing IT in the real world, is you had to buy servers. You had to buy servers, you had to build servers, and that crap was expensive, right? The marketing department was not going to spin up their own Xeon server. Those were the good days, right? If the marketing department wanted something, they went to the IT department because, no mid-level marketing professional was going to drop $5,000 on a Xeon server and try to figure out how to build one. Technically, they could. It wasn't actually that complicated, but they just weren't going to do it. So the nice part was, not that long ago, is that it was very easy for IT to control the entire IT infrastructure. So when we think about laws, when we think about regulations, PCI compliance, HIPPA compliance, archiving communication, all of this kind of stuff, it was relatively easy for the IT department to deal with because everything had to run through their systems. The thing is, now in the modern world, We have Office 365, and we have Azure, and we have Dropbox, and we have Twilio, and we have a whole bunch of products and services out there that are so easy, even a mid-level marketing manager can configure them. And not only can they configure them, but it's relatively inexpensive, right? You swipe a credit card, and you pay $5 or $10 or $20 a month, and then you get a service that might be very valuable for these employees. Again, an employee may not spend $5,000 a month in order to make sure that they're able to get their commissions, but they will spend $5 or $10 or $20 a month in order to make sure they get their commissions. So a big problem that we have nowadays is that essentially what we have is this shadow IT, where we have a lot of IT infrastructure that's being used by employees that is outside the realm of the corporate IT environment. These are not paid for with corporate credit cards. They're not cataloged by anybody in the IT department. There's almost no way to audit all of this stuff, and you have no idea what is going on. So one of the big questions you have to ask yourself in the modern world is, why are employees using shadow IT? So again, you know, I like to rag on employees a lot. I've been an owner, I've written paychecks, it's a fun thing to do. But the reality is, a lot of times, employees are using shadow IT for a specific reason. Again, if we go back and we talk about a salesperson, if a salesperson is trying to land sales and they earn a commission for landing sales, and they find that the infrastructure, the equipment that you are giving them is not up to snuff, then they might go out and they might buy their own equipment, or they might buy their own services in order to make the sales process a hell of a lot easier. So let's say you have a CRM solution, customer relationship management solution, and let's say the damn thing's 10 years old. It's still running on your server. You're not using Salesforce, you're not using something else. It's still running on your server. It's slow, it's janky, right? It's just a piece of crap. Now I'm a salesperson. I get paid for selling, right? I get commissions. The worse the CRM solution is, the harder it's going to be for me to get paid. And salespeople are very competitive, right? Always going out there trying to do better, right? These are the ex-quarterbacks, the ex-football players, right? As a geek, the ex-D&D club people, we all go to the server room. The ex-football player people, they all go into sales. That's how it is, right? So they're competitive. So they sit there, and they got this janky-ass piece of crap CRM that should have been retired 10 years ago. What's the likelihood that they're going to go and they're just simply going to purchase their own CRM solution? Again, I purchased something called Copper. Pretty good. It used to be called ProsperWorks. Anyways, $30 a month, they get a full CRM solution with filters and all kinds of different really cool stuff that allows them to do their job better. And so from their context, if they're able to close more sales, then what that means is they're able to make more commission. And from a cursory view, that is very good for the company. Here's a problem. See, if they put all of their information into the company's CRM solution, and then they leave the company, then basically their CRM account basically gets assigned to a different person, and then the company keeps all that information. All the communication, all the documentation, all the sales, all the leads, all of that kind of stuff stays. That still has institutional value to the company. What happens on the other hand? You have this salesperson. They are rocking, they are rolling, they are closing because they decided to use their own CRM solution, spend a couple of bucks to have their own CRM solution, and so they're just racking in the sales. Some other company sees how impressive they are. They poach your salesperson. Now think about it. That CRM solution that they're using, that wasn't the company's CRM solution. It's not even being paid for by the company's credit card. The company doesn't own any of the information in that CRM solution. So if that salesperson goes to a direct competitor, all they do is they keep all the information that they plugged into the CRM solution and they keep using it. Worst case, or another scenario, is they go to somebody that's not a competitor, they don't need that information anymore, and they just stop paying for the account. Either way, 2 years of sales information, this customer relationship information, can disappear in the blink of an eye because they decided not to use your CRM solution. And again, you multiply that by 10 or 20 or 100 salespeople and think about what a disaster that can be. Again, if you have folks that are sending confidential information around. Let's say you have your HR department. Your HR department needs to send stacks of PDFs. Maybe they don't understand how PDFs work. The size of the PDFs are way too damn big. They're way bigger than they're supposed to be. And so they're sending around 100 meg PDFs for some reason with all the employee information. employee social security numbers, employee this, employee that, employee the other thing. Now think about this, right? Let's say you have a quota on your Exchange server or whatever else that only allows, attachments up to 10 megs or 20 megs. The human resources people aren't able to send through the system because it keeps failing out. So what if the salespeople, or what the human resources people, then start using their own Gmail accounts in order to email 100 meg files of employee personally identifiable information? Right? That's a major, major, major hole. So you need to be asking the employees, again, actually having a conversation, having a relationship, why are they having problems? Why are they turning to shadow IT? And then you need to go to the executives and explain the value proposition there. What pain point is the shadow IT solving? And then bring shadow IT into the light, right? Again, if you have a janky ass CRM solution, your salespeople, you may have 10 salespeople that are all using the same CRM solution only on their own credit cards, right? They're all like, yes, this was Bob had a great idea. So we all copied him so that we can get more sales. So one of the things to look at is if all your salespeople are using this new CRM solution, then just bring it into the light and go to the executive, say, look, the salespeople are using the CRM solution. They already like it. It's already doing what they need to do. The old system isn't doing what it needs to do. So we need to create a corporate account with a CRM solution and then bring everybody on board. That's one of the things you need to be thinking about there. And then if for some reason they keep using the old CRM solution or whatever else, there needs to be consequences. Again, shadow IT is a massive security vulnerability. Everything from personal identifiable information to simply information that the company should own. If that is vulnerable because the employees are swiping their own credit cards and creating their own accounts, that is a damage to the company. So after you figured out what the pain point is, after you've seen why the employees are doing what they're doing, after you've brought as much as possible of that shadow IT into the light, and again, it goes back to discipline and punishment. Anybody that's continuing to use that needs to be punished because it's going to create problems for the company going into the future. We can look at whitelist and blacklist and DNS. Again, this is something to be thinking about in the modern world. Everybody has their own computers. And nowadays, for some reason, employees feel like they should be able to use Facebook on the company dime. That's what I find hilarious. I don't get it. I don't understand. You have very highly paid employees using Facebook on the company time. How does that make any sense? But it's true. So one of the things you need to think about is how can you use DNS filters and such to prevent users from going to inappropriate sites on company equipment. Again, I did a whole class on using DNS for cybersecurity. DNS is a great way to prevent people from going to crappy sites that you don't want them to go to. Everything from Pornhub to Facebook, gambling sites, and the whole 9 yards. And so one of the things you should be thinking about is creating kind of like this whitelist, blacklist systems for your DNS to prevent people from going to the sites you don't want them to go to. One of the things I would say with this is, again, with employees, if you don't give employees the ability to circumvent the system in a way, then they will find their own way to circumvent the system. So this is where, like with a whitelist and blacklist with the DNS filters, I would argue you should create that guest network for their BYOD devices. And then if they want to go to Facebook or YouTube or Pornhub on their BYOD device, it is not your equipment. This is equipment that the employee owns, and so if they want their own equipment infected, that's their business. But that's one of the things I would think about. Past that, you need to think about system auditing. So again, if you're going to be dealing with employees, a big thing is to understand how the employees are actually using their systems. Everybody has an idea that they understand what employees are doing, and that usually goes out the window as soon as they start seeing audit logs. There's the idea of what you think people are doing, and then there's reality, right? And so you need to have a system continuously auditing infrastructure for things like user logons, device discovery, available network services, and possible things like SSIDs. Again, user logons. Are you sure that you know who's employed by the company? One of the big vulnerabilities at companies is basically accounts that should have been disabled years ago are still fully usable. They still have full authorization to the routing and remote access server, the VPN server on Windows, and so basically these old accounts can still VPN into your internal network and get whatever the hell the old user was able to get to. That is a bad idea. One of the things you should have, continuously audit your infrastructure, is user logons. Do you know when somebody has not logged in the infrastructure in 2 weeks? All right, that's a pretty simple thing, right? If everybody's working day to day, everybody logs in every day. Maybe they log in every other day, but you figure everybody should log in at least every 2 weeks, you would think. And so do you have a way of seeing who has not logged in the past 2 weeks? And if they haven't logged in the past 2 weeks, then calling HR or whoever else and just say, hey, I need to know what's going on with these employees. I've got 20 employees that have not logged in the past 2 weeks. Can you tell me what's going on? They can say fired, 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 terminated, maternity leave, vacation, blah, 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 blah. And then you can go through and you can disable the accounts. Device discovery. Do you know all the devices on your network? Again, the big fancy thing nowadays is people taking Kali Linux and putting it on a Raspberry Pi using Nmap and then scanning the network. That's a fancy hacking attack, scanning the network. Well, you can do the same thing. Are you scanning for Raspberry Pis? If you have some kind of system that's constantly doing device discovery and it starts popping up a couple of Raspberry Pis, there shouldn't be any Raspberry Pis on our infrastructure. Why are there Raspberry Pis on our infrastructure? Let me go track that down. Right? Or somebody brings in their own computer or whatever else, or their own printer. All kinds of weird stuff. Available network services. Again, are there web servers running on your network that aren't supposed to be running? FTP servers, VPN servers, are they running your network? And they shouldn't be running. That's something that can be found from auditing. And then also things like SSIDs, like this is a horrible security hole. Again, I've seen this in the real world, right? So let's say somebody has a desktop computer in their office, and then they have their own laptop or their BYOD device, and they want to have wireless access. But they're in a part of the building where the wireless access doesn't get to them. They've talked to their boss has basically blown them off. They want to have wireless access. So what do? They go out, they grab a little Linksys wireless access point from Best Buy, they plug it into the internal network, and passwords are for other people. And so now you have basically a wide open wireless access point with a direct connection to your internal network because somebody plugged it in. Again, when was the last time you went through and just audited how many SSIDs showed up? Just literally walk around with your computer, your smartphone. Just walk around and see, do any SSIDs show up that shouldn't be there? And if they do, figure out what the hell's going on. But again, doing this auditing to understand what your environment actually looks like. Asset tracking is a big thing. Again, this is one of the things you can have in the auditing process. Every time a computer logs in, again, you have that MAC address, a media access control address. You can log that type of thing. And so if you have documentation on the MAC addresses, if you have documentation on all the hardware that's supposed to be in your infrastructure, one of the things you can do is you can create a process for asset tracking. So every time somebody logs in from a computer, not only do you track that they logged in, but you track that their physical computer logged in. And then the important thing there is, the big question is, if a laptop is stolen, would you know it? Again, you think about a company, you got 1,000, you got 2,000, you got 10,000 employees. There's a lot of laptops running around. People getting hired, people are getting fired, the whole 9 yards. If a laptop disappeared, you as a cybersecurity person or you as the IT director, would you know that laptop disappeared? Would you know what might be on that laptop? The whole 9 yards. Again, what happens if an employee gets fired? They're supposed to return their laptop, and they never do. Again, that salesperson with all kinds of information. Oh, they're supposed to return the laptop. Did they actually do it? Would you know if they did? Something to consider. Physical access control. This is a big deal in the real world. Locks keep good people from doing stupid things. Again, it's not that people are bad. Again, I'm not anti-people. I don't hate people. I know it may seem like I do sometimes because the way I do these videos. I actually think most employees are good. Most employees are good, and most employees are actually trying to do good. The problem is how they go about trying to do good. It's horrible, right? And so locks can keep good people from doing stupid things. Again, you think about this with your server room. If you have a server room and there's no lock on the door and somebody can just walk into the server room and plug in whatever the hell they want to plug in, that could be a hell of a problem, right? You always have those people that want to be technology professionals. Those people, they did 2 years of an IT program at their community college and they want to be just like you someday. And so then they just start doing weird stuff. They just start plugging in stuff where they're not supposed to plug in stuff. And then they unplug stuff that they definitely are not supposed to unplug. Here's the thing, if there's a lock on the server room, they can't do that. You can't plug and unplug, on a rack if you have literally no access to that rack. Again, you think about this with hackers, penetration testers or whatever else, people sneaking into buildings, going into networking closets or server rooms or whatever else, trying to plug equipment in. If there are good locks on those doors that people are not able to bypass, then you don't have to worry about that problem. I would argue create access control between departments, building floors, and IT infrastructure. The reality with a lot of employees is most employees just need to stay in their area, right? IT's over here, marketing's over there, legal's over there, the whole 9 yards. Marketing person doesn't need to necessarily be wandering through the legal department area. Legal department doesn't necessarily need to be wandering through the HR person's area. The more people are able to walk around an environment, the more likely it is that you're going to have some problem. Again, everything from cybersecurity problems, you would plug in that Raspberry Pi and trying to scan the network, to simply things like purses being stolen. Again, security is security. That's one of the things I really want you to think about with this, is when I talk about cybersecurity, again, good cybersecurity equals good administration, right? Good cybersecurity also equals good security. If you have physical access control between different departments, it makes it very difficult for random people to go from one department to another. Not only do you have less worry about somebody trying to hack into your systems physically on location, but again, things like purses disappearing, things like wallets disappearing, things like other weird security problems that you can have with companies. All of that is tremendously lowered too. Create a process for gaining access. Again, so if you get access, somebody gets access to the Human Resources Department or the IT department or whatever else, you should get, with all of this, you should create a process. How does somebody actually go about getting access to these different departments, so they have an access control key or whatever else? And then also think about how should that be revoked? When you give somebody access to a department that's not their own, how long should that exist for? Should that be a permanent thing? Probably not. Maybe have it for a day, maybe have it for 2 days, maybe have it for 3 weeks or whatever else. Again, with access control, the same thing is true with your Active Directory accounts. You should disable access control when somebody is fired, right? If somebody has a key card that is able to get them into the building and you do not disable that key card as soon as they're terminated, they could walk in a couple of days from now and shoot your building up. Again, cybersecurity is also equals good security. If somebody walks in, their key card, they're able to swipe their key card, they're able to walk into the cube farm, that has your sales department, they pull out an AR-15 and they start blowing the crap out of that department. That's a problem. That's a problem. Could have been solved. They could have swiped their card, right? If they have their fancy AR-15 and they have their bulletproof vest on and they're sitting there swiping their card and it's not working, well, then they can't go in and shoot up the office. Again, sad but true. Then the other thing too is finally you should also do the audit. Who has access to what areas? Again, with a lot of the access control systems, they're basically computerized systems. They use some kind of database engine on the back end anyway, and you can audit who is going into what areas, who has authorization to go into certain areas, who hasn't been in an area for a long time. So let's say you have a marketing person that for some reason was given the ability to go into the legal area, and they were given it a year ago, but they haven't used it in 6 months. All right, look, if you haven't used it in 6 months, let's simply disable access to the legal department. If they need the access to the legal department in the future, then we can go through the reauthorization process. Something to really be thinking about. Let's see, logs and real-time notifications. One of the things you should do is create systems to notify admins in real time about security issues. Again, with logs, logs are boring. Like most of our job, logs are incredibly boring. So one of the big problems you can have is as an administrator, you're just sitting there looking at logs, so many logs. It's boring. So one of the problems is whenever you have anything that's boring, what's true for the user is true for the cybersecurity expert too. If it's really boring, it's really easy to ignore, or at least not put a priority to. And so something that you may want to think about is creating with your infrastructure is logging whenever events happen, and then having real-time notifications, right? If your administrators get emailed every time a new MAC address pops up on the network, right, that is an impetus to them. That's kind of like pushing them to go figure out what the hell the new MAC address is. Right, again, if you have a pretty stable infrastructure, not the BYOD stuff, BYOD is its own world, but if you have your own internal infrastructure with servers and print servers and the whole 9 yards, right, if a new MAC address pops onto the network, you should probably figure out why. Again, if you just have a log, if you just have this nasty log file and it's just a new MAC address, yeah, whatever, right? By having some kind of real-time alert, real-time notification, hopefully with some kind of additional reporting mechanism where somebody can plug in, like almost like a ticketing thing, that they went down, they tracked down what that particular device is. That's a good way of doing cybersecurity. Again, if somebody hasn't logged in 2 weeks, or if somebody hadn't logged in a month and now they logged in, this is the first time they've logged in 30 days, having that pop up and having somebody, that seems very weird. Let me just go and research this person, make sure I understand what's going on. Again, you'd call human resources. They haven't logged in for a month because they were on maternity leave. That makes sense. If you call human resources and they haven't logged in a month because they were fired a month ago, then you know that there's a problem. All right, by having that real-time notification, that basically, that puts a bit of a fire under the butt of system admins. That can be useful. Again, to be clear, they are all employees to me. They're all employees, and all employees are a pain in the ass. Because that's the whole thing. A lot of people are like, yeah, I'm with Eli. I'm with those users. Those users suck. And I'm like, what man? What we system administrator? All employees are a pain in the ass. Anyway, disabling terminated employees. Again, I've talked about this a little bit throughout the video. Zombie accounts are a huge problem, right? People quit, people are fired, contractors come in, they get temporary accounts for a little while, and they never get cleaned out of the system. The problem is those zombie accounts, they get all the access that you gave them. A lot of times that access is right in remote access service, their VPN services and whatever else, and so those zombie accounts can come back and bite you in the ass in the future. Again, imagine if you have a computer, like you have your laptops, right? So you have 1,000 laptops, and from the last refresh cycle, every couple of years you refresh all the laptops. You have a pile of laptops, you send them off to a recycler, they don't get recycled properly, and all of a sudden, somebody opens up a computer, and for whatever reason, it auto logs in so that they're able to get into that domain user account, and then there's a VPN button there, and they double click the VPN, and all of a sudden, somebody in Sudan has now VPN'd into your internal infrastructure. Does that seem smart? No. So anyways, so again, disabling terminated accounts can be incredibly important. Again, security is about more than firewall ports. Again, one of the priorities I'm just trying to push through your head. And that really is about the end of this particular class. The last slide that I would say is that you need to create a coffee budget. It seems like a joke, seems like, oh, hee hee ha ha, but it's true. Security is a human activity. Again, the reason that this is the second part in the cybersecurity class, or cybersecurity curriculum, is because this is probably one of the most important things when you're dealing with cybersecurity. When you're dealing with employees, when you're dealing with executives, when you're dealing with all of the people that have any kind of value to the system, you need to communicate with everybody to understand what is going on. Again, there's this idea in the modern world that we can control other people. Again, the startup world has pushed this idea of change the world. What I always I had a buddy of mine, he was an Indian buddy of mine, and what he always said, was kind of funny, it was years ago, and he said, like, Eli, why do we think we can change the world when we can't even change our own family members? I always liked that quote because he was having a frustrated part with like one of his family members was doing something completely stupid as far as he was concerned, and he was just really frustrated about it. He was like, why do we think we can change the world when we can't even change our family members? But there is this idea in this age of ego, we believe we can force our will upon other people. We are right and they need to get on board. Now look, when you have a couple people at a company doing this, it's a pain in the ass. But I don't know, maybe they're right in a way. It's okay, right? 0.5% of the employees at your company having massive egos, it's probably not going to be a big detriment to your company. It may actually be helpful at the end of the day. The problem in the social networking world and the activist world that we are currently in, everybody believes that they are right and everybody else needs to get on board. The problem is, what happens when everybody thinks that they're right and everybody else needs to get on board? It becomes a bit of a disaster because nobody else agrees with you. And then they get very pissed off that you're trying to assert your will onto them, and it gets into a crap session, right? So one of the big things that I say, again, it's about relationships. You are the IT person. You're not. Let's be clear, you're not the CEO, nor are you the warehouse worker. You're not an executive, unless you're the CIO or CTO. Your job is to make the system work as smoothly as possible. Again, your job is to make sure that the systems stay up and running. Your job is to make sure that the system is usable to all users that need to use a system. You need to make sure that the system is reliable and resilient so that if a tornado or if a ransomware attack hits your systems, you can get everything up and running to a usable capacity as quickly as possible, right? These are the things that are your job. And so what you need to do is you need to lock down as much as possible, but then you also need to communicate with people to figure out where their pain points are. What problem is the CEO having? What problem is a warehouse worker having? What problem is a salesperson having? What problem is a secretary having? What problem are the CXOs, the other executive officers happening? And sit there and try to figure out how to solve those problems. If you do more communication, if you focus on communication a little more and you focus a little less on products, I think you'll probably do a hell of a lot better at the end of the day. But that's me. That's my opinion, as they say. So anyways, that's the class on employee security policy. Again, I know we went over a whole bunch of different things here, and very little of it had anything to do with IP addresses. But do remember, again, if you are going to be a leader in the technology world, if you are going to be an owner in the technology world, your job is as much about regulation and laws and taxes and fixed asset depreciation and all that kind of stuff. It's at least as much about that as it is about servers and infrastructure as a service and all that type of thing. And so one of the big things you need to be thinking about is if you find an employee doing nefarious activity on your infrastructure, do you have a policy that allows you to fire them? And I tell you, if a lot of you actually think about that, I would bet the answer is no. And then what the hell do you do about that? What happens when you find a nefarious actor on your network and you're not legally able to fire them? Fire. You know what I'm saying? And again, the other thing too is to be talking with all of this with the managers and with all the other decision makers of the company, so things are documented properly, right? A lot of people know that if they show up to work late, that they'll get written up. A lot of people know that if they sexually harass, hopefully, another employee, or hopefully they'll get written up, right? But a lot of people aren't thinking about, what is the web use policy? Are they thinking that they're going to get written up if they try to go to Pornhub during the middle of the day? And one of the things you need to be thinking about is going and talking with all the managers to make sure anything that violates the policies actually gets written up, so that when it comes time to actually take a serious action, such as terminating an employee, everything has been properly documented so that it's not a legal headache going into the future. So anyways, there you go. That is the class for the day. Again, if you like these types of classes and would like to support what I'm doing, there is a crowdfunding link. Currently, it's the donor box link somewhere around this video. If you'd like to throw a couple of dollars in, that would be oh so helpful to actually support me doing what I am trying to do here. As always, I enjoyed teaching this class. I look forward to seeing you at the next one.